All right, thanks Jennifer. Welcome and good morning. It's good to see a packed room. I know over the for the last 5 years this room has always been packed, so it's always good to see our emergency management community working with our National Weather Service partners, and excited to see if it's going to snow or not snow and us to get ready. So I just wanted to go over a little bit of logistics. I know many of you have been here many times before, but there are restrooms down the hall to your left. There is the Wi-Fi password there on the screen, and it's Rangers exclamation point. There are some drinks towards the back. Thanks to Vanessa, she's refilling those, and I'm sure we're gonna have a break, so we're gonna have some coffee. And then as far as if there's ever any emergencies, please follow our staff. Our staff, if you'll raise your hand. We have set up the Everbridge notification system, so we are all on that. So in any event emergency, there's exit doors are clearly marked, but if we need to evacuate the building, just follow our staff. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Jill.
Thank you so much. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Jennifer Dunn. I'm the Warning Coordination Meteorologist at the National Weather Service office in Fort Worth. We have a lot of Weather Service Fort Worth personnel people sitting up here at the front, so if you haven't a chance to meet them and want to at the break or after, please come up and find them. We have a couple other, I think, scattered back around. Just out of curiosity, how many of you, this is your first IWT or IWT in this region? A couple of hands, maybe about a dozen there. Well, welcome. So hopefully you'll find this workshop informative and helpful, kind of get an idea for how we do these. We've been doing them since 2011, I believe. So lots of good information sharing. I'm going to run through just kind of the rules and expectations to give you an idea of what we can expect today. The Integrated Warning Team, which is what IWT stands for, is comprised of many groups involved in weather messaging, public safety, preparedness, response, actions during, and it can include, of course, the Weather Service, broadcast media, emergency management, public safety. Not listed up there would even include health, education we've got up there, just kind of all people involved with taking some sort of action that need to protect residents and people that live here in the North Central Texas area. So the workshop itself is where we all get together to talk about best practices, challenges, ways to improve collaboration, communication. There's hopefully to be some takeaways that we can work on. And we're kind of working towards the goal of one message and multiple voices. So when there is hazardous weather, hopefully we're all saying the same or very similar things, reduces the amount of confusion that goes out to the public, and that way we're all working together using these workshops here to hopefully kind of reach towards that goal of one message during an event, but multiple voices, multiple ways to share that information. I really quickly want to take a few minutes or a second here to thank the planning committee. We threw this together pretty quickly, and it was a small planning committee. If those members could just stand up if they're not stuck in traffic already, I'd appreciate it. We've got Alicia and Margaret and Dan, Ted, Juan. Those really made up kind of our main members. I know I'm missing some, but Justin helped on some of the calls also. And of course, we always thank the COG here for hosting us once again in this room too. Oh, I forgot to fix this slide, sorry. Noticed that this morning. Today we expect you to participate. Keep comments to your jurisdiction, but keep comments factual as well. It's a judgment-free zone with no accusing or blaming, but it's not saying you can't bring up something and question something. We just want to be mindful and respectful of that. Disagreements are fine, attacks are not. Questions are encouraged. Ask questions. There's no silly questions in this room. We want to remind you too that this is a safe space. Media can get their story quotes at the break if they're looking for a story on it, or after the meeting. I will tell you that we do have a camera recording in the back with Patricia back there. We're recording the meeting so that you can view it again after. If you had staff, personnel, friends, colleagues that weren't here, we'll put up, again, just like we did last year, a non-public link on our YouTube channel. We'll share that link directly with y'all, and y'all can go back and either review any of the material or have somebody that wasn't able to be here go through the material and what was shared here. If you want to share anything on social media, please do not share specific decisions, but you can share concepts that we talk about here. Make sure to make introductions to those you don't know. Getting to know each other before an event, whether or whatnot happens, is the best time to start forming those partnerships. And please take a minute just to make sure you silence electronics, which I just realized I haven't done, so I'll be doing that in 1 second here. So our goals for today is to increase understanding of each group of the IWT, understand the complexities and limitations of decisions, something you say about how you do things in your jurisdiction can probably help another person understand, especially when we're talking about the different groups between meteorology and public sector and emergency management and broadcast side. Having that understanding really helps us all work together a little bit better. Discover common issues. I don't know what happened to the slides, I'm sorry. And propose solutions to those as well. This was emailed out to you, but we didn't have any paper copies of it, but we're kind of going to talk about winter weather here in the first half. We'll have a break after the winter weather discussion, and then we'll have some more information building on the probabilistic education we started last year, and then a demonstration of how the Weather Service produces and how we get the text product for our severe thunderstorm and tornado polygons. And we'll wrap up with an NWSChat discussion just to kind of see how it's been going, go over a couple of new updates, and that will wrap us up for today with some free time at the end. But with each of those, we have built-in time for questions and discussions. So please make sure you are doing that. For those of you who are sitting in this front table here, if you're not familiar, the microphones are muted, but there is a talk button on there. I believe it's the second from the right. You hit that and it turns red. Then your microphone will be turned on. We do have a microphone runner, or we will, so for anybody back there, raise your hand. We'll make sure to get a microphone to you as well. With that, I wanted to give Kevin Starbuck and TDEM, with all the recent changes, just an opportunity to address y'all and provide any updates. I know we all got an email from him, but it's a great time with all of us here together in the room to hear from them. So thank you for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. I know it's early, but with a name like Starbuck, a little bit of espresso goes a long way. So good morning. All right, a little better. Real quickly, Kevin Starbuck, I'm the Assistant Chief for now Region 2 with the Texas Division of Emergency Management. And with the end of the legislative session, one significant change occurred that has resulted in some reorganization of our field operations within TDEM. The legislature adjusted the responsibility for assignment of who is the lead for each of the disaster districts. In the past, that was always the DPS captain for the individual districts, and those districts were based across the state on the planning districts, the planning cogs, for each of the regions of the state. So 24 planning districts, 3 of them were split into multiple districts. So here in District 4, the North Central Texas cog, it was 4A and 4B. Houston area was 4 districts, and there was one other area that was split in 2. Out in West Texas. So the dynamic change that we moved from it being arbitrarily the DPS captain to being a designee of the chair of the Texas Emergency Management Council, being the one responsible for designating who the sheriff was for each of those areas. Chief Kidd is the chair of that council, and as he viewed it, that put that responsibility on TDEM. And so from that, we have reworked our district coordinator positions and adjusted them to district chief positions, with 24 of them assigned across the state based on each of the planning districts, plus a 25th in the state capital area, responsible for activities at the state capital. So for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, for the North Central Texas cog, that resulted in us going from 4A, 4B, consolidating that to just District 4. And as part of that process, we hired Robert Medford, who was the EMC over in Fort Worth, and prior to that was the assistant EMC at Irving, to fill that role. So Robert's going to come up and talk a little bit later in the program during one of Alicia's presentations to talk about sheltering and winter weather activities and like. So I will save him coming up and making introductions till he can come up at that point. But that was one of the changes that have been made related to organizationally for the North Central Texas cog area. The other piece of that is that their responsibility is to develop and consolidate the state agencies to be more effective in their response and to managing the disaster district EOC. While many of our district coordinators in the past were doing that type of role already, they now have that responsibility for activities within the district and making sure that the emergency management partners from our state agencies are prepared and ready to respond and staff the disaster district EOCs when needed. So with that responsibility, they have that change in role of running that group and being more responsible for the day-to-day operation and management of that team. In many ways, acting as an emergency management coordinator for the district, and filling that role. As part of that, our county liaison officers are going to play a greater and greater role in the direct day-to-day interaction with local jurisdictions. And many of our CLOs are here today. If I can have all the CLOs from TDEM stand up. I know there's 4 or 5 of you here. There's the 5th one. All right, so that's some of our CLOs. These are all the CLOs for District 4 right now, so the North Central Texas COG area. All of them are assigned here in the area. Currently, there are 5 that report to Robert. Over time, we will expand that number to 13. So we will have effectively 13 county liaison officers with 16 counties in the North Central Texas Council of Government. So he will almost have a CLO in every county, working with him to help work with each individual jurisdiction and to bring those needs and issues that come up to him to help to coordinate with the state agencies when there's a disaster that strikes that rises to that threshold. So more to come on that, and certainly we'll have opportunities for Robert and his team here in North Central Texas to interact and introduce themselves to each of you and to work with all of you and the like, and we certainly look forward to that. In addition, we still have our preparedness, our mitigation, our recovery, our incident support, programmatic areas, and all of those areas continue to be very active. We do have some mitigation grants that are currently open, so there are still some opportunities to apply for mitigation grants and do those types of things. We are in our TDEM 147 season, so if you have not updated your TDEM 147, which is the contact information for your jurisdiction, one of our county liaison officers or Robert will be reaching out to you and making those connections to hopefully get those updated so that we can have that information updated on our annual updates and all those other activities going on. All of my staff are based in the Fort Worth area. We have facilities with A&M in the Fort Worth, downtown Fort Worth area, and certainly look forward to continue to work and visit with all of you. Are there any questions I can maybe address real quickly? I'm getting the head nod from Jennifer that we don't have time for questions, I think, so no. And certainly myself and the entire team will be around throughout the morning, so if there are questions you have or opportunities you want to come visit with us, we'd be happy to visit with you more on that. So thank you very much. Look forward to a good workshop, and thank you all for all that you do in serving the citizens here in North Central Texas.
All right, so we're going to kick things off with Juan from the National Weather Service, who's going to be going through our winter weather outlook and just a couple of other general NWS Fort Worth reminders that we've been working on.
Can you guys hear me in the back? Perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. I know you're here to know if it's going to snow or not, so I'm going to tell you if it's going to snow or not. But before that, El Nino returns. So for those of you that don't speak Spanish, that is Spanish for the Nino. So the Nino returns. So here we have the general weather pattern we see during El Nino. We have an active Pacific jet stream that sets up across the southern portions of the country. That usually leads to weather conditions across from California down to the southeast. So that's what we have. This is the first time we've seen El Nino in about 4 years. So that's a bit of a shift compared to what we've experienced in the last couple of years. So as we talk about an outlook, what is an outlook and what isn't an outlook? It doesn't attempt to predict the weather. So I'm not going to talk about specific snow amounts or specific days. If you're getting married in February, it's probably going to be cold, but that's about all I can say. It provides the likelihood of above, below normal precipitation or temperatures, and it cannot predict season snowfall amounts. But with that, we can talk about the outlook. So here we have the outlook for December, January, and February. This is the latest outlook that came out about 2 weeks ago. And we are currently looking at near normal conditions for much of North Texas. Now you can expect higher probabilities of near normal conditions in the Panhandle. That's a bit of a change from the previous outlook where we did see higher probabilities of near normal for North Texas. But for now we're looking at, I believe that's a 33 to 40% chance of near normal. When we look at precipitation, we're looking at about 33 to 40% or 33 to 50% chance of above normal precipitation. Now, you might be wondering, what does that mean? Well, we're going to talk about it here in a little bit, but it might be wintry precipitation, it might not be wintry precipitation. But we'll take a look at what it means in the El Nino context. When we take a look at the drought outlook, much of the drought, or portions of the drought, have been reduced over the past couple of months. But we do expect either removal of drought in some portions, or the drought remaining but slight improvements, especially out in the western portions of the area. All right, so what does this mean? We're looking at mostly great conditions for winter, but some ice and snow as well. We have actually had wintry precipitation every year since records began in the late 1800s. So I can basically guarantee that we're going to have some sort of wintry precipitation as we go into winter. So let's take a look at what we forecasted last year and where we ended up. So last year we were in a La Nina pattern. We were forecasting temperatures that were going to be above normal and precipitation that was going to be below normal. So here is where we ended up. We averaged out 51.6 degrees with an average high of 62.2 and an average low of 41.3. Overall, those are between 3 and almost 4 degrees above normal. When it comes to precipitation, we did see 7.74 inches, which was below normal as well. And we ended up with 1.3 inches of snow, which is right around normal. Now, when we look at past El Ninos or past strong El Ninos, which is where we are at, oftentimes those can be deceiving because so the last strong El Nino, which was 2015 and 2016, it was very similar to the La Nina year of 2021 and 2022, where we had slightly below normal precipitation. So just because we are talking about a strong El Nino, that doesn't mean that we are going to experience high degree of wintry precipitation. There's still quite a bit of variability that goes into forecasting those specifics. So when we look at the past El Nino winters, here we compare El Nino, La Nina, neutral, and then we average out the 30-year period between 91 and 2020. We see that the highest differences, or the most stark differences, are in the maximum temperature and the snowfall. So if we look at the maximum temperature, the blue, the far left bar, that's the El Nino year. So we see that those max temperatures were a little lower. And highlighting the snowfall, we do see that on average, the greatest snowfall does fall during El Nino years. And that is about 3 inches of snow. Now the maximum temperature, there's a reason why we're seeing those lower temperatures. It's not because we're going to see these extreme intrusions of Arctic air. Rather, we're going to see higher probabilities of cloudier conditions. So when it's cloudy, we usually see lower temperatures. So this is where that average comes from. Usually cloudier conditions, lower temperatures. In the grand scheme of things, between December, January, February, it's going to lead to an average lower temperature. So highlighting the days of measurable snowfall and the days of any wintry precipitation, when it comes to a neutral year, an El Nino year, or La Nina year, the days of measurable precipitation for El Nino are higher. So we have 2.6, on average, 2.6 days of measurable snowfall. Now, talking about any winter precipitation, we have a neutral year, which is 7.6, and then second comes in as El Nino, and then the last one is La Nina. Again, since the records began in the late 1800s, every year we've received some sort of wintry precipitation. Now, I know that little box is it's pretty small, but here we have snowfall for all El Nino years. So when we take a look at this is from 1959 to 2023, and we're comparing it to average. When it comes to El Nino, we do see that slight blue tint or hue across the Dallas-Fort Worth and the North Central Texas Hog area. So overall, that's about 0 to 2 inches of snowfall above average. Now, when you compare that to a strong to moderate El Nino, you see that blue get a little bit brighter. And that's kind of where we are now, but when we compare it to average. There are other, I'm not saying that we're going to see more snow, but there are other factors that are going to affect whether or not we see more snow than average. All right, but snow is flaky. When it comes to forecasting, and looking at the past as well, the bright reds are years, or the color represents the number of years where we had below average snowfall in a strong to moderate El Nino. So basically this is telling you the number of years where the opposite of what you would expect happened. And here we have 7 or more, a couple of areas have closer to 9. So 7 plus of the last 13 moderate to strong El Ninos had below average snowfall. Now again, this is because of other factors that complicate the outlook versus the weather forecast. You have the Arctic oscillations when we talk about a couple of days to weeks. This can develop and send Arctic intrusions or Arctic air down into the southern plains, and then we have other like the Pacific Decadal Oscillation, which can offset the ENSO, the influence of the ENSO El Nino, depending on the phase. So that is the winter outlook. Any questions before we move on to a couple of reminders? Yes?
So where is the EO at?
I haven't looked at it. Do you know that or anybody? No. I have not. But we can definitely get that answer before we end the session. So a couple of reminders. We're going to talk about winter storm watching criteria as we head into the winter season. We do have, this was a change that happened last year, but just as a reminder, for the watch and the warning criteria, we're all in the green area. So for the green area, we have a snow of 3 inches or more, ice of 1/4 of an inch or more, sleet of a 1/2 inch or more, or impacts that pose a significant threat to society. And for all of these, it can be a combination of one or the other. So if we meet any of those criteria, that is criteria for winter storm watch or warning. For an ice storm warning, the criteria is a significant impacts of power infrastructure are expected due to ice weighing down trees and power lines. Generally, that would be about 1/2 inch or more with light winds, or 1/4 of an inch or more with winds greater than 60 miles per hour. Now, you can think of an ice storm warning as something that is more extreme than a winter storm watch or a winter storm warning. So when you see an ice storm warning, that's basically us saying we're expecting impacts to infrastructure. All right, now we're going to move over to the new email address. So all of you probably received an email from this new email address this past week. So this is the new email address, NWS.fortworth@noaa.gov. I see a couple of pictures, cameras taking pictures there. So all mass communication emails will be sent from this email address. If you, for partner emails ahead of winter weather, severe weather, any kind of hazardous weather that we're going to send out, that'll come from nws.fortworth@noaa.gov. If you see or if you need any changes done to who receives these emails, or if you have any questions, reply to that same email that is monitored 24/7, and we can reply to that as well. So don't be afraid to reply to that same email. Now you might see, depending on who you use, you might see nws.fortworth@noaa.gov sent by or sent from. But regardless of whether you see that or not, it's still going to go to that same email address. All right, so we've heard that there are some email formatting issues. So this is what we see. right? We send out the email, we think it's all pretty and the bullet points are working and whatnot. And then we get replies and we see the image that's on the right where actually this is a pretty, I mean, it's not correct formatting. But we've seen some emails that have all sorts of different sizes of fonts, different fonts. The formatting and the bullets don't line up. So we're curious, how many of you have issues with formatting whenever you receive this email? Okay. Yeah, pretty good amount. So when it comes to formatting, or when it comes to how you see the email, of those that have issues with receiving the email or receiving it correctly, how many of you view it in Gmail? Okay. What about Outlook? Okay. Okay. What about Microsoft? And Apple? Okay.
It's like the Apple email app, not like you download a Gmail on your iPhone. Like
Yeah.
Apple email app.
No.
Outlook.
Okay. So we have one back there. So it looks like Outlook and Apple are probably the ones that have issues. So we were trying to fix this issue when we converted over to an email as well, and it doesn't seem to have fixed it. So just bear with us as we try to work a different solution to that. It might take some time for us to get down to the problem. I know one of the issues is the HTML is being read differently depending on which software you use. So we'll try to figure that out, and hopefully we can fix these formatting issues. All right, moving over to winter weather conference calls. So there are no changes to the conference call rhythm. We are going to continue with our typical battle rhythm as we go into the winter season. Anytime we have some sort of weather, some winter weather. So to remember, to highlight the typical battle rhythm here, we have T-minus 2 days. The notification for conference calls begins, or the notification goes out. 1 day before, we have the first call at 1 p.m. And then from then on, we have regular 3:40 a.m., 1 p.m., and 9 p.m. until the event is over. You'll see a bit of new graphics that we have created for the winter weather conference calls. We have, this is all going to be native to ArcGIS. So a lot of things don't really change. The main thing is you'll have something, if you look at the upper right image there, I know it's a bit small, but you'll have additional tabs that you can click on for more information. But it's all going to be contained within that same dashboard. And just to highlight, as we go into the part of the winter weather conference calls, we do suggest that you look at the weather information on there, so that whenever we jump on, if you have any questions, we can quickly get through that. The partner website. So we do have a partner website. It's weather.gov/FWG/partners. There's a QR code there if you would like to scan that as well, and it takes you to that website. We do have a situational awareness dashboard where you're able to see if we have any active weather watches or warnings. We have forecast links if you have specific needs to forecast. We also have a weather sit rep that we can create, and that looks like the bottom right. So if you need anything, it's all contained in there. Just click through the tabs, and that should get you the information that you need. Yes. Yes.
Is this going to be pinned in Slack? So the dashboard, very top of Slack, so for the winter weather that has like the school districts on it and all that, will that be pinned in Slack? I don't know if we pinned it because everybody that's in Slack isn't necessarily on the winter weather calls, but we did pin. I'll have to double check. We might pin the partners page because, and then you can get to the dashboard on the partners page too. But because we have amateur radio in NWSChat 2.0 and others that don't necessarily qualify, but we can take a look at that and I can double check that. But it's always hosted on the partners webpage here too, if you save that. It's always under, I believe, the More Link, or Winter tab. And then the More Links tab is the one that has the weather sit rep, the link to register for NWSChat if you have new people that you need to do, and they're always on this page too.
Thanks. So meteorological winter is upon us. I believe, actually, I was just looking, I think it's been 10 years since the cobblestone ice happened. I think that started December 5th, so that's the date. So meteorological winter is upon us. Good luck. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or email Jen. Well, we're here for anything you guys need.
A lot of the rest of us are going to be kind of listening in, but she has a couple of topics that I think are great to cover for them. So let me go ahead and swap you out here and turn it.
All right, so thanks for joining us. This is just a little bit of our EM perspective that we're going to bring to the conversation for winter weather. So just a couple of things that are front of mind as we come into the season and things that you're thinking about as you update your own internal plans. So this is a part where the participation and discussion is going to come into play. So we'll do a few review slides just to put you back in that frame of mind. And then we'd love to get a little bit more discussion around room. And we're also going to have TDM up in this section as well. So Robert will be up here in just a short while. Yeah. All right, so a couple of things that we're going to go over. The first thing is case studies. So we wanted to review just a few incidents, one that didn't happen here, and then a reminder of one that did, just to put you in those frame of minds. And then we'll talk about public safety concerns and ultimately a few discussion topics. Okay, so the first one is what didn't happen here. So I wasn't as familiar with this. Obviously, I knew it occurred, but for those of us that didn't live it directly, we just want to make sure we also get the benefit of those incidents. So in Central Texas, earlier this year, January 30th, they were hit with ice, right? It was 6.9 inch, or I'm sorry, that would be a lot. 0.69 inches, so more than a half an inch of ice, which is, obviously, that's a lot of impact. So the trees were covered with ice, and you start to get that weight. What they also found is that the V-shaped cuts had really affected the trees. Let me set this down for just a minute. Do the YMCA. So the V-shaped cuts in trees, when they work on the power lines and they go through those areas, a V-shaped cut like this can really come into play when you add that much ice, because now you've got weight on my hands. And as opposed to a tree that has more vertical shape, you can hold a lot more weight with this. With the Y shape, if you start putting weight on my hands, you're done. So they did find that that was a big factor in this incident. The power company had been doing those Y-shaped cuts and using that primarily without any other cuts. So that was one factor in this incident that I found kind of interesting. So obviously they had the ice accumulation, the V-shaped cuts I mentioned, the YMCA there came into play with the extra weight on the trees. And then they had a lot of damage, and the power outages were really what affected them for a longer period. I think the roadways were cleared after 48 hours, but what they found is that those power outages, just like we experienced in our area, are something that is a little bit longer lasting. So because you have to do repairs. So this is one that happened in our area. We do have a few new emergency managers, or we've had some turnover in our profession, so we just want to make sure that we're getting the benefit of some of these lessons learned. One of the bigger ones is the I-35 crash, right? We've had the folks that passed away in an accident, and Maryville, I think, is around as part of the COG staff was the Fort Worth emergency management lead for that time, and we have quite a few COG staff that are still a part of that incident too. So it was just, the 130 vehicles, a really significant crash that lasted for a while. And you guys remember, this is when we made national news. They like to take pictures of the fountains. That's something that stands still, I think, And something that shows the severe amount of ice buildup that we had over time. So we just had a lot of leads in the region, and we had some really severe incidents that resulted from this. It was a record breaker. You guys remember Uri? We like to do that in Texas, it seems, break those records. So this is one that had broken some that had stood for quite a while. 1909, 1936, 1909. And a few, 1910 and another. So these were some long-standing records that we were doing the same thing. Ultimately, the result of Uri across Texas was some pretty severe impacts. Direct deaths that were attributed were 246, but it depends on really how you calculate those. Some people say it's as high as 750. We do know that we lost power. We had some really significant impacts. So this is just, I know a lot of us lived it, but reminders, we had gas curtailments that were requested, so it wasn't just power. We had power impacts, we had water plant issues, right? People that couldn't process their water as they needed to and keep their systems running well. So really the trifecta of things were going on: gas issues, water issues, power issues, and then we also had the COVID supply chain to contend with. So anytime you heard COVID, you heard supply chain issues, and that was further compounding some of the issues with parts or supplies for our water providers and other things as well. So it was really just a perfect storm of some things that came together, and we find that in a lot of incidents. It's compounding factors. So a little bit about public communication, things that happened during that time, just to remind us, we all start out with the nice protect your pipes and plants and pets and all of those things. And then ultimately we asked for a lot more of the public during that time. Some power conservation, some gas conservation, some water considerations, like let your pipes drip, but then maybe turn it off for 2 hours if you still have power, and then turn it back on. So because we need to communicate so efficiently with the public and ask them to do something different, I think it was really important. And ultimately, we know the challenge is when you lose power and your cell phone dies, right? Some people that really affects what they're able to get. So having alternatives, radio, and other ways to get your information are really, really important. So we found that this was a challenge all the way around for the intern. Okay, so a little bit more, we talked about the water issues, and then ultimately the debris. We had a lot of pipes break, we had a lot of outages, and because the homes were without power for so long, we found that there was a lot of damage. So we had construction debris to deal with after the storm, as well as the usual, right, the sand, the ground materials that we needed to clean up, catching up on trash services. So it's just a lot for our responders and people to work on during those times, the water cutoffs and things. So public safety concerns during winter weather, right? This is by no means a comprehensive list, but to help in our discussion, some of the things that we've talked about here are communication, debris or power issues, curtailments that we're asked to talk to the public about this side of the room. Travel impacts, so roadway closures or issues on bridges and overpasses, things like that we might see in the area. So the proximity of resources becomes a challenge, because if it's not already nearby, distance is the problem, right? You can't get something from across the region like you normally would. And then warming centers and overnight shelters are resources that the public may depend on in those cases to recharge devices, or especially medical components, things like that as well. So what I wanted to invite TDM up for is the warming center and shelter reporting process. So if I've got those open in my community, what are the best ways and processes to really relay that up the chain so that the public has more places to look for that. So I know in these graphics I've got some screenshots from their website. It's tdm.texas.gov/warm that has the warming centers and the cooling centers that are listed on there as well. So I'll turn it over.
You ready for me? All right. Can you hear me okay? Yes? Okay, thumbs up. Great. So some of you may have been used to doing things a little differently. I know that we've had some inquiries about how we're going to report shelter openings in the region. Some did a web form, some did an email. So what we would really like for you to do is either send me an email or send your CLO an email. Give us some basic information about the shelter that you're opening. Is it a warming center? Is it a full-blown shelter? What are some of the parameters to be able to come into the shelter? Are you allowing pets? Are you going to have special needs availability there? Things of that nature. What time it's opening, what time it's closing, if it's just a warming center. Email that information to us. We'll submit that to the SOC, and then the SOC will populate the GIS map with that information. And as people are able to log on to the internet, hopefully they'll have power. Who knows? We all remember Snowmageddon. But they'll be able to go to the TDM website. They'll be able to look at that GIS map and be able to click on those locations. So as you submit them, they'll populate a map. The public will be able to click on those locations. They'll be able to see what services are provided, if pets are allowed, what time they're opening, what time they're closing. And then that just help us. It's just really a way to be able to get the information out to the residents. It's one more avenue. I know that a lot of cities have that information on their website. This is just one more avenue that we can get the information out to the residents. But any questions on that? Great. Thank you.
Thank you guys, we really appreciate it. So that gives us a centralized location to help with reporting, to help with mapping, to help with what you see on the website there. And again, it's TDM, get it right, tdm.texas.gov/inform. So if you're looking for one centralized location, also the little pop-up that comes up immediately when you log onto the website is about 211, right? Call 211 for the most current information, because this website is updated periodically. So that's a good way for residents to find the most current data. And if we're reporting that as emergency managers, it's going to be better populated with information from our area. So we just want to make sure we're, spreading the message as far as wide. We're going to have it on our city websites as well, but that gives us state component for that for region as well. All right, so when you registered for this, we asked about temperature, sort of caveats or triggers or sections where you start to get concerned or take action or make a decision to do something different in your in your own jurisdiction. So we have a couple of slides that have the results of those surveys. I think Jennifer is going to tell us a little bit more about the results of the survey.
Yeah, so pretty much as you can see, y'all's thresholds run the gauntlet from 0 to 65. And I put 65 on there because I wanted that person to know that I saw that they put 65. And the reasoning was take the day off work. So most of y'all put somewhere between 0 and 50. But as you can see, and I couldn't get it out of the middle of the screen there, but 32 is one of the main responses for what you all did as far as a threshold. But we do see second clusterings around, I believe, 30 and 28, and then up on the higher end, 35 and 40, which I know equates a lot more with the decisions to open at least overnight shelters. Some of this, even though you don't see it on the bottom necessarily, a lot of the 32s also, I didn't really divide out between with or without precipitation. So some of y'all are looking at different percentages of precipitation also. So it's essentially to say that there's a big spectrum of precip, chance for rain or chance for precip, and temperatures that y'all are looking at to make critical decisions. And so on the Weather Service and the media, or the meteorology side of it, of course, we want to make sure that we're capturing those thresholds appropriately for you, or at least making sure that you have the information you need when you're making those critical decisions. So, Alicia, if you want to click to the next one real quick, just some of the responses themselves. Again, the take the day off, I didn't put on there, but the person that I'm not going to wrap up and start a fire and then turn the heater on, I caught that also, just want you to know that. So travel, and that can be anything from road conditions to trying to get staff to work to treating roads. So anything that kind of fell on roadways I put under travel. So that's obviously our main impacts or our actions that y'all are taking or concerned about. However, sheltering and warming shelters was right up there. And then as far as protecting certain residents and groups, that there seemed to be some implication or some answers on that outside of just the homeless themselves, which has their own category a little farther down. And then as far as notifying leadership and residents, I kind of lump that into the residents with anybody who puts social media posts, mail outs, call outs, things of that nature. So there's a lot that's happening, as we can imagine, just across the region, except somebody was concerned that it was just, quote, real cold. I think when it got down to 0 or something like that. So just wanted to share with you a little bit about the actual when we asked you that on the registration, what was the response and what's going on. So Alicia, I'll kind of tag team back over to you if there's anything you wanted to cover on these, but part of it too, I want to make sure that people are getting, on the Weather Service side, that they're getting the information for these different temperature thresholds and how, is there a better way that we can improve that, but I'll turn it back.
So a trigger example for my own jurisdiction is when we hit some of these temperature thresholds, we start thinking about staff lodging, right? Staff that live a distance away, we have designated distance, sort of a bubble that we've identified. If they're beyond that and I need them to work on, clearing the roadways or potentially debris, anything else, we work for staff lodging. So it's just an example of sort of those trigger components or something that might be more important or occur at a specific point. So within your own winter weather plans, sort of thinking about that over time, what are your triggers and what are you looking for? I know precipitation, as Jennifer mentioned, is really important, right? Because if it's real cold and you don't have precipitation, sometimes you won't have those concerns. We're just looking for the best information in our own jurisdictions to be able to make those decisions and really ramp up those resources. The other thing that you might be thinking about is the storage of vehicles, right? Covered parking garages are really nice if you're looking for staff lodging accommodations. You don't have to scrape it off in the morning, maybe it's a little bit safer overnight, things like that. So if you can sort of build those items into your plan or think about it when you're working on staffing and other components, the shifts, a 12-hour shift schedule is what we switched to. Same thing for your own jurisdiction, just thinking about what those triggers are and what the result would be in your action. Okay, so we have a little bit of time built into this presentation for discussions. Other elements that have been successful in your own responses, things that work in your own jurisdictions that you might want to share as examples. And Jennifer is going to give us a flag for time, so we will, we'll definitely try to stay within the realm. But I would be interested to hear from any other jurisdictions with you specific examples or things that work well based on sort of, now we've got you in that winter weather mindset of things that work for challenges that you experience. Yes.
Okay. So you probably have seen on the news, we don't have ERCOT for instance.
We do not have ERCOT here. The German representative from Encore, but I think Katie's here. Okay.
So I guess there was a program that ERCOT was working with power companies across the state of Texas on conservation and adding more plants online to provide more electrical generation capability during winter months. In lack of participation, they sort of cut that program. So I'm sort of seeing the writing on the wall that we, and also news reports, I think they've said 20% chance, right, that we could lose power. So I'm sort of wanting to sort of open that discussion to see what your plans are. I know during 2021 with Winter Storm Uri, we all had impacts. We had a lot of mass care and sheltering impacts as well, because when you're talking about long bouts of time where people have no power, and most of your shelters probably don't have power either, and so taking individuals from their home and then taking them to a warming facility or a shelter that doesn't have power either. So I would kind of open up the discussion maybe on what, if there's any solutions or best practices that people have identified when it comes to power. I know for us in Midlothian, we have 2 water treatment facilities, and so some of the best practices or lessons learned for us is that we had an Encore feed going into our water treatment facility, but then also we added a Hillco, which is also another power provider that we have in our city. So having a dual feed into our water treatment facilities to prevent, hopefully, the loss of power to water treatment, so we can treat water and distribute water, drinking water, and that sort of thing. So we were blessed during 2021 that we did not have a loss of drinking water, so we did not have a boil water notice, but I know many communities around us did. So lots of challenges as it relates to power, which poses issues for us as it relates to the activation of our emergency management plans and bringing our partners to the table when we're talking about hazardous weather conditions.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, just to expand on that, I think one obstacle that we always have as far as the response and recovery piece is a regional coordination outside of what you all provide us directly for the winter weather outlook piece of it. All the other stuff that happened from TxDOT to Encore to sheltering and all this other stuff, I think sometimes we struggle as a region to get a regional call developed, because I know that you all don't have the time to dedicate and carve out for our other needs, because you'll have so many other calls going on. Just throwing it out there just to always plant the seed for TDM or someone really to start creating those regional calls, because it's super beneficial for us to hear from each other and then have our representatives from Encore, Atmos and all these other critical providers engaged in those conversations with us, because it helps us internally make those decisions. And every year we always struggle, when are the calls going to start? I know it's going to be bad, but we don't have the opportunity to really get together, and then we're forced to do the back-end texting with our, our colleagues and stuff. So that's one thing. The second thing is this will be the first year that I think a lot of us will have to really put the forethought into creating the plans for the welfare checks. So when we have these utility outages, how are we going to do that successfully in inclement conditions like this? So.
I have a comment that is not exactly what you were asking, but it was about the references to Winter Storm Uri. I want to point out that the National Weather Service does not name winter storms. And I don't know if anyone from that side of the table wants to comment on it, but to me, I think it causes confusion. You could have more companies name storms, and then which name are you going to choose? Right now, you're just using something that I believe the Weather Channel came up with. And I would suggest not using that term in the future.
So for everybody's frame of reference, 2021, I think we also called it Snowmageddon. It had many a name. And then the power issues that Tanya alluded to, I think are some of our conversations during the planning team meetings. And I've talked to Jennifer about that as well, where the power grid concerns, are things that we definitely want to build into our plans, right? Because we did experience that in 2021. We were on the brink. And that's why they couldn't do those rolling outages that we thought were going to happen. So 2021, was a challenge in a lot of ways, right? It had the makings of a lot of those things built into one. So whether you had boil water notices, outages, gas curtailments that were requested, it was sort of a perfect storm of things that came together.
Yeah, it was, and building on that a little bit more, that's why Alicia talked a little bit too about the Central Texas event from just earlier this year, because that wasn't a whole-scale power grid failure or brink of it. It actually was large amounts of ice bringing down power lines, power poles, trees onto things, and so if we have that happens on a scale here in the DFW Metroplex, how, I guess kind of what Chase came into, how is everybody operating and functioning, and everybody's going to need cleanup and resources and TxDOT here and there and everything. So we want to be mindful to prepare, and maybe you can help with this, as that, if a significant winter storm can have the same type of impacts, or even worse type of impacts, And we want to make sure that we're considering that when we talk about preparing for power outages, warming shelters, gasoline shortages, things of that we're not just thinking about total grid failure.
And in our world, we kind of go by disaster names. There's always a number of signs, so we definitely don't want to do that and confuse folks. So thank you, I appreciate it. Thanks, Evan.
Good morning, Noel McFarland, Frisco Fire. Back to that power issue, we highly recommend backup generators. With your backup generators, yes, you may do monthly tests and they last for 8 hours or maybe shorter. Be concerned or be cautious about burning out your generators. And also with the gas curtailments, be thinking about alternate generators such as diesel generators. As we saw in the city of Frisco, our gas generators started having issues because there was not enough gas in the pipelines because everyone was using their gas. So we're looking into transitioning over to full diesel generators for our fire stations and critical lift stations and pump stations.
And this is a question for TDM. Where do we stand on the wellness check guidance? I know earlier this year we were asked to provide guidance back to the wellness check rules, but never heard anything else after that.
I'll get back with you, Randall.
Thanks, Kevin.
So now that our new district chief is going to be coordinating with state agencies and that sort of thing to sort of rally the state agencies to support the locals during a winter weather event. So I'm curious to see if ERCOT or the PUC is going to be a part of that to provide more information to the North Central Texas area about the status versus just looking at a dashboard on a website.
A couple things on that. First and foremost, the PUC doesn't have people across the state. So we won't see a PUC rep in each of the districts, and they will be primarily consolidated at the SOC level, at the State Operations Center. And Sean Hazard and his team there do a very good job of communicating. So if there are specific questions and like here in the district, that would be probably the best path for us, is that we would forward that up and get responses from him. The other part of that is that we've done a lot of work. I know TDEP has, and I know many of you have, with our partners from Encore. And Encore is not a power generation company. They are a power transmission company. So they're the primary conduit across North Central Texas of providing the power to individual houses and getting the power from the power generation to the homes and businesses across the area. They've got a number of tools and really are getting some enhancements that will help at the county and city level. And I would encourage you all to reach out to Charles Elk and his team with Encore to kind of start to explore what some of those new tools are and how they may help you have better visibility, even down to the individual customer level as far as outages and power impacts and the like. Another part of that would be to also make sure that if you have critical infrastructure, that those are being tracked, and part of that, and I know as a local jurisdiction, that may not necessarily be something that you're responsible for, like a nursing home or a hospital or the like, but it's important to make sure that you understand what is on their critical infrastructure list and what's on those circuits that they're trying to maintain and the like. So from the 2021 storm, there's a lot of improvements that Encore and power companies in general have been making. But it's incumbent upon all of us as state, local emergency managers to engage our partners in making sure we understand what their plans are and how they will manage it and like. And then, as I said, they've got some new tools that will enhance that and the like. I'd also like to just touch base on. I know Chase, you made the comment and brought up the idea of a regional call, and I think what I would love to hear, and we've had some conversations both individually with locals. Me and Maribel have talked about it. We've talked about it with Jennifer and the Weather Service, and we recognize that the Weather Service doing the weather calls, they've got to focus. They're focused on the weather event and providing us information on what the forecast is and the impacts of the weather event. But then it becomes that question of what is the right threshold for starting to host regional calls. The state, 10 o'clock every day, will be hosting weather calls. I recognize that may not be of huge benefit because in many ways it's a regurgitation of what our Weather Service is providing. And you will want something more granular, something more specific, and an opportunity to discuss issues that you're experiencing here in the region or in the district, what is that right threshold? Is it a need to have those before the event, or is that one too many calls and we're all like, hey, look, there's a SOC call, there's a weather service call, there's this call. Do we need another call for preparation? Is it after the impacts have started? And I think we would love to get some feedback from all of you as to where is that threshold, where is the right point in time for either Robert or us as Region 2, covering not only North Central Texas, but all the way up to Wichita Falls and up into the Texoma area. Is there a point in time where that becomes beneficial to having a regional call and hosting that and trying to get feedback from the regional EMs as far as issues and things that are starting to occur? I know we get call inundated, and I think that's where we want to try to find the right balance, because otherwise we spend all of our time on conference calls and nobody ever has time to respond or manage the incident. So any feedback on that would be appreciated.
So, I think just like a hurricane response, before the incident happens, you have at least a coordination before the incident. I think depending on the severity of the incident would help drive that decision to make the call or not. If it's a low grade, low risk, maybe not. But if we have a higher grade, higher risk, higher threat, then absolutely, because I think that's where you all assist us with getting those stakeholders, the state agencies and Encore and Atmos and these, big dogs at the table to be able to give us that information. What are they predicting? Because it helps us lean forward and make some of those decisions before the impacts actually happen. So I don't think that's a perfect answer, but I do think that if it is a higher risk, higher impact event, absolutely I would recommend a pre-event coordination call.
One thing that changed for us this year, I'll just fill in while others are thinking, was the freezing frost element, right? Freezing frost really coats everything, and we still did have some impacts even from freezing frost. So that was a bit of a challenge in my own jurisdiction this past season. So maybe something, sometimes we think it sounds kind of benign, but those are things that can still have travel impacts. So as far as regional coordination, I think we've had county calls, like I split 2 counties, so sometimes I have them in one county and on the other, or vice versa. And maybe in place of those county calls or in addition to those regional calls can be helpful, mostly where we can hear from representatives or really talk about some of the things that we're experiencing, or seeing across the region. When we had the water facilities that weren't able to provide it, and we're going into those oil notices and things like that. I think those kind of calls would be really helpful to foresee those things as cascading effects. And for recovery, right, after 2020, what year am I talking about? 2021. So obviously that was important for us to bring in federal resources. So we had SBA loans that were offered in our area. We had our county, even the tax assessor's office, waived some of those assessments on properties and waited to do those assessments for properties that had damage and other things. So I think there were resources that we offered after such a severe incident. We also came out with, you guys remember the ISTAT and the ESTAT for damage assessment, where people could submit their own damage using those portals. And that was important because the damage was inside a house. It's not something I or my teams going out in the fields could see because it's the pipes in their own home. So to be able to report their own damage, provide pictures and photographs and things like that was really important after, and I think that helped us with recovery. So I said Yuri again, strike it from the record. So it was, I know, I looked for
You
that.
can call it Yuri. It's okay. That's how people
It wasn't
know.
famous enough to have a name. But in my own jurisdiction, we latched on to Yuri and we use that. So I appreciate it, guys. Anybody else have anything in their own view?
I'd like to just throw out one more thing. Last year's winter storm in central Texas, the ice storm that impacted down there, the reason that we received a federal declaration for public assistance was largely in part due to the impacts on co-ops and Austin Power and Light in particular. So it becomes critical for us to report that information and to gather that information. That's where PSAT really comes into play. The other part that opens up is if we get a major declaration on the public assistance side, it now opens up, and SBA has adjusted their rules, especially for rural counties. And it may not necessarily assist us as much in Dallas, Tarrant, Collin, and Denton, but in the rural counties surrounding, if we get a major disaster declaration under public assistance, SBA is kicked in on one home uninsured being damaged versus the 25 that we've had in the past. So they've lessened that threshold with that other piece in place. And I suspect that what we would find is that we can make a logical argument with SBA on the more urban jurisdictions to get that particular disaster assistance program in place. It becomes very critical, and it was very important that we got that information reported because the state threshold is now up to $53.6 million of uninsured damage to public infrastructure. And it's just going to continue to go up. And so you couple the county thresholds with the state threshold, and quite honestly, the winter storm last year, the only reason that one got declared was a lot of the co-op damage to the co-op infrastructure that occurred across the state, and played a huge role in that. Encore doesn't help us in many ways when it comes to public assistance declarations. They're a for-profit company. So we then have to go look at those alternative pieces to make that connection and to get past that threshold in order to open that gateway for assistance from both the public assistance side, but it also lessens that threshold and makes it to where we are more apt to get some of the individual assistance programs that are offered through the federal government. So I would just throw that out there as something to consider when it comes time to report that information and submit the documentation and the like. And I know everybody kind of rolls their eyes and goes, why am I going through and doing all this paperwork? I'm not going to get any money out of it, and we got to fill out more paperwork and everything else. But ultimately, there is an end game to it that it does open up other pathways of assistance that can directly assist your residents and those that are directly impacted, and at least provide them an opportunity to take advantage of some of those programs that they may not otherwise be eligible for.
There's a hand up. Jen, here, on the other side.
Hi there, I'm Katie Blake with Encore. I'm here as a meteorologist and communications representative. But one thing I just want to say, our local area managers are all across our service territory, and our hope is that you all have good relationships with those area managers. If you don't know who your local Encore area manager is, please feel free to come see me, and I can get you in contact with them. They do a really great job with fostering relationships with the emergency managers, local media in their area. So we want you to have a relationship with them and a good relationship. So if you don't know who that person is, and you're in the Encore service territory, please feel free to come see me, and I can get you in contact with them. Thanks.
We have just a few minutes left in this topic, so I didn't know what else was on your other bullets here. I think we covered most of them, but just in the last few minutes here, I just kind of wanted to, I guess speaking from a weather service side or a forecasting meteorology side too, as y'all are looking at your different temperature thresholds, the data you provided us shows us that there's a range. A lot of our big focus, I think, that we're going to try to highlight, especially in our briefings coming up this year, is going to be critical thresholds at 32, 28, and then I think 10 was the other one. It looks like there was a little bump on 30, a little bump on 35, also a no for warming shelter. So we may start incorporating a little bit more of those thresholds into our briefings. But when it comes to your decision making too, without talking to each of you, knowing if, okay, is my threshold at 32 that I'm opening shelters, or 35, I guess, or whatever it is, or are y'all trying to account for some wiggle room in that? Like, well, they say 32, but could it be down actually below to 31, 30? And if something like that is really on the cusp for you, and you're having a hard time making a decision, or however your decision making looks like, if you need some of that extra information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, especially through NWSChat. Because as we talk about a little bit later, we do have some probabilistic data that we can look at to kind of give you an idea of what the probability of it coming off of that single deterministic number is. So feel free to reach out to us on that. We'll do the best we can. All of the probabilistic data doesn't do it for every temperature. It kind of hits on the very...
Early in the season, before we have our first official freeze, the 35 or 38 may be important because you could get frost. People have to remember that those temperatures are measured above ground level, and it can be colder at the ground. So people are wanting to protect plants. That could be an issue that you want to address more thoroughly early in the season. Of course, in midwinter, 38-degree temperature is not going to be important.
Good input.
I know in my own survey response, I said the wind chill, obviously those factors.
Alicia had the most complete survey response, so I'll tell you that. She knew the assignment and she did it.
So the 28-degree wind chill, even if the temperature, regardless of temperature really, overnight that is blistering, right? And that over time it's just too much. So I know a lot of our local shelter efforts sort of use that as a threshold, so that was something that I submitted to. Does anybody else have any other temperature feedback that would be helpful?
Hey Jen, this is Maribel. I know for us on the amount of pipes that would be bursting, our water department really keyed in on the temperature fluctuations. So I don't know if it warrants being on the call, but just kind of be mindful that that's when they really narrowed in, is when was it going to get above freezing, how quick was that spread, how long was it going to be, and we would know as far as the OC operations when we would be busy on the water issues.
Do you know if there is a certain quick fluctuation? Is there like a number that
There is a number in Acapulco, Fort Worth, and we can get that to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I know it might vary for whatever, but even just having one of an idea would be good. Thank you, Maribel.
That is definitely when the calls get cut, when it's on.
All right.
Well, I want to thank Alicia for leading this session, for all y'all's input on it. Hopefully you got something from it and the discussions can continue from here. We are at break, so we're going to, with enough people here, we're going to take a break for 15 minutes until 10 a.m. So water, coffee, Coke, introduce people, go to the restroom, talk to each other, and we'll be back in a little bit.
And Cody. So we're going to play a variation of the newlywed game to see how strong the marriage is between emergency managers and meteorologists. So are you okay, so I'm going to ask you guys a series of questions to both of you, and then one of you is going to guess the other's answers. All right, so question one, we'll start off with a couple of easy icebreakers. Okay, so Cody, what is your favorite ICS role? And write down your answer on the whiteboard. And then Ted, you're going to write down your guess.
Okay.
Are we ready? All right, Ted, what's your guess?
I guess the operations section chief.
And are we right, Cody?
No.
Oh, planning section chief.
We all know.
Okay, no points so far. Okay, next question. Ted, what is your favorite product issued by the National Weather Service?
I got it.
There's a raising together, yeah. Write down your answer, and then Cody, you're going to write down your guess for his favorite product that we issue here at the National Weather Service.
Okay. Okay.
All right, Cody, what's your guess?
Area forecast discussion.
Wow.
Yes, that is my favorite.
All right. Look at that. We've got a point on the board. Okay, I don't know if you count that point. Maybe there's a little cheating going on.
Not cheating, I'm trying.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the real questions. So, Cody, for this situation, consider two forecast scenarios. Scenario A has a 75% chance of 0 ice with a 25% chance of receiving a 1/10 of an inch of ice. Scenario B has a forecast where there's a 75% chance of a 1/10 of an inch of ice and only a 25% chance of 2/10 of an inch of ice. Which scenario has the highest forecast confidence? Write down your answer and write down your guess. And you can all think about how you would answer this question too. All right, are we ready? Okay, Ted, what's your answer?
I thought that this was a trick question, and I said that they're both the same.
Okay. Cody, what's your answer?
B.
All right, well, let's talk about it. Ted, why did you answer that way?
Well, as a meteorologist, it's my job to forecast accumulation, and the accumulation amounts were both different by 1/10 of an inch, which the confidence percentages were both the same, so I thought they were both the same.
Okay, so forecast confidence can have varying definitions. So Ted, as a meteorologist, you were purely thinking of confidence in a statistical definition. Do you see that? But that isn't always correct, especially from the perspective of an emergency manager, where you're taking into account impacts and everything else in the situation, in the environment. So while statistically these two scenarios have the same confidence, the difference lies in the impacts. So do you see why Cody would answer with scenario B?
Yes, and Cody, I promise I'll be better next time.
I'll send you my Math for Marines book. That's how I figured the answer out for that question.
All right, moving on to our next question. Ted, there is a 90% chance of at least 1 inch of snow. How much snow do you expect to receive? Cody, write down your answer. Okay, Cody, what's your guess?
Around 1 inch.
And Ted, what's yours?
I said 2 to 4 inches.
Okay, why the high number, Ted?
Well, you told me there was a 90% chance of 1 inch of snow, which makes me think that 90% chance is awful close to 100% chance. So you're almost guaranteed 1 inch of snow. And if that were the case, I would expect that I'm more likely to get much more than that, maybe 2 to 4. In fact, I might even say that there's just as much chance of getting something like 6 inches of snow.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so we've got 1 point on the board so far, but no points lately. We'll see if we can improve here a little bit. Just a couple of questions left. Okay, so now the forecast for your location is for 2 inches of snow. Should the NWS meteorologist tell you about a 10% chance for 6 inches of snow? Cody, write down your answer, and Ted, it's your time to guess. Okay, your guess is?
No.
Okay. And Cody, your answer is? Okay, Ted, do you want to say why you said no?
I was really worried that if I said that the forecast is for 2 inches of snow, but there could be as much as 6 inches of snow, that everybody would hear that the forecast is 2 to 6 inches of snow. But I was also starting to think about impacts, but surely there can't be that much impact difference between 2 and 6 inches of snow, right?
Cody?
Yeah. So with forecast, I like what's probable, but also what's possible. And if 6 inches is possible, that's good to know. In terms of impact, in reality, maybe not a lot of difference, but the perception of the impact is different. People are different. People are just people. And they're going to think it's somehow different driving on 6 inches of snow than 1 or 2 inches.
All right. Ted, do you see why?
I understand now, Cody. I'll be better next time.
Okay, last question. Hopefully we can get 1 more point on the board. Cody, an NWS meteorologist tells me there's a 98% chance for freezing rain. No freezing rain occurred. Was the forecast wrong? All right, Cody, your guess is?
No.
And Ted, the answer is?
No.
Look at that. There might be just a chance for this relationship to work out after all. All right, thank you guys so much for participating. As a treat, you guys get a little box of candy. Now, for the rest of this presentation, if you ask me a question or if you answer a question, you also get a box of candy. So please ask me questions. All right.
Maddie, I think I got 1 point.
Okay, all right, we'll get you a box too. All right. So getting started, probabilistic forecast and messaging, what to know. First off, everybody here that participated in one of the feedback sessions that we held over the summer, I got to meet a lot of you, got some good face-to-face time with you. Thank you guys so much for providing your feedback. We would not be moving forward in the way that we are with this type of discussion, with this type of messaging, without that. It's very important to us, and I will reassure you that I took everything to heart. We have changed a lot of what we're doing going forward, and we're going to keep changing as you guys keep giving us feedback. So, a quick overview. We have an ocean of data now. We have more computing power that has improved weather modeling and improved the state of weather forecasting. We've got more information at our fingertips now than ever, and we want to start giving you that to help you make better decisions. So what is a probabilistic forecast? A probabilistic forecast provides multiple potential outcomes and assigns a likelihood of each one occurring. So when you're using probabilities to make decisions, that means that over multiple scenarios, the correct decision will be made more often than not. But what to be aware of, percentages don't always mean a chance for rain now. I know you guys have looked at graphics for years and years and years, maybe not as many years as some others, and you see a percentage sign on a graphic. It does not mean your chance for rain automatically anymore. Please look at the context on the graphic because it's vital for you to actually understand what we're telling you. And probabilistic forecasts are meant to be decision tools, and unfortunately not a fortune-telling machine. We're trying to enable you to make these more informed decisions by empowering you with better information. So forecast confidence. Is there a correct definition? We talked about this a little bit in the activity. There's multiple. There's statistical, like Ted was thinking of. There's a 90% chance of high confidence in at least 1 inch of rain. There's, will the hazard event occur or not? There's high confidence in receiving snow at your location. And there's also forecaster's experience. So given this weather pattern, we have high confidence in a flood. So I'm going to just open up the floor a little bit. What does forecast confidence mean to you? We've got a forecast confidence bar in our partner email. What does that mean to you? Does anybody have any comments? Does anybody want some candy? Yeah.
I know at the school district, that is a question that superintendents, senior leadership will often ask in the discussion of, okay, do we need to shut down classes? At what point do we call the end of class for the day if we dismiss early? That they will ask, what is my confidence as the emergency manager, and I will base that off of the confidence that the National Weather Service has.
Okay.
So it's greatly important.
All right. Anything else? Anybody else have any other comments? Okay. Yes. So as I kind of have heard a lot over the summer, forecast confidence, that is a huge part, especially in the partner email, when you're making those decisions in the 0 to 3 day time frame, but particularly for winter weather as well. It's very, very crucial. It's important, I think, to also, I'll just say, take in the additional context in that email. Because when we say what we're certain of and what we're less certain of, that's where we can give you those other details. And we can elaborate on, are we confident that everybody's going to get some snow across North Texas? Are we confident in this type of event? Are we confident in the statistics that, you probably have a chance for at least half an inch of snow? There's a 90% chance. We've got that high confidence that you're going to get that. So that's where we can elaborate there. And again, if you guys have questions about our confidence or anything like that, we're going to try to be as specific as we can on our graphics going forward, but we don't have a lot of space on our graphics all the time. So if you have questions as an emergency manager, as a decision maker, always reach out to us, whether it's on chat or calling us up or sending Jen an email, whatever. Okay, messaging strategies. So for a chance at a certain threshold, this depicts your percent chance of meeting or exceeding a certain value for weather parameter. So that's that lower graph right there. And it's often displayed with the most likely value up there, at the top. So this shows, sorry, excuse me. On our probability of exceedance in the lower right, you'll see that red area that's painted with a 30% chance of 3 inches of rain. So we're highlighting that threshold. We're trying to choose an important threshold. 3 inches of rain is typically our flash flood guidance in about 24 hours for our location. And so we're highlighting that there to show that there is a 30% real threat for flash flood right there. Now, of course, that's not across the board. It's not going to be like that in every environment. If we've had recent rainfall, then that threshold is going to be lowered. But what we're trying to do here is choose an impactful threshold to enable your decision making and show you more what threats that you can be facing. So, what to be aware of with this? Always know the most likely forecast for the vital context. Try not to anchor yourself in the actual threshold that you see. So this shows right here that there's a 30% chance of 3 inches, but you need to focus on what your most likely forecast is as well. That's what we're emphasizing. And I'll ask a quick question here. Does that swath of red on that graphic, how does anybody feel about that? Do we have opinions? We're using now some yellow, orange, and red outlines to highlight these threats for different hazards. And so it's not just going to be severe that you might see these types of colors. Does that throw anyone off? And it's okay if you think that.
Is there any thought to connecting these colors to the warning colors? I mean, we all have radar software, and when I see red, I'm thinking warning, not probability.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you see red, what warning are you thinking?
Tornado.
Of course, you're thinking tornado warning. So that's a problem, right? We've got so many color scales and color curves across the National Weather Service. We are working to try and improve that. But no, we're currently not tying these threats themselves for our probability of exceedance to the warnings. So we're trying to highlight the real threat for flooding. So we want red to be sounding off an alarm in your head. That's what we're trying to do here. And so when we have a higher threshold, say maybe a chance for 8 inches, we might even highlight a lower percentage of that. So it could be red for 10% chance of 8 inches, because that's something that you need to know, and that's something that needs to sound off an alarm in your head. That's what we're trying to do, at least. And so we're wanting constant feedback on this, how you're interpreting these graphics. So when your chance of a certain threshold is high, so you have a 90% chance of an inch of snow, then your actual value, like Ted showed in the activity, could be significantly higher than the actual threshold shown. So Ted answered around 2 to 4, and that there's even a decent chance of 6 inches, a notable chance of 6 inches of snow in this scenario. So when you're seeing graphics like this and you're seeing a chance for a certain threshold, do not anchor yourself in that one value, because that's not the entire story. You need the other context, especially when you're looking at other offices' graphics or other graphics produced by media. That is something that you need to take into account. Okay, so alternate scenarios. This is another type of way that we'll message probabilistically. So this is often displayed as 2 separate maps. These are snapshots of the same time, but different forecast outcomes. So in some situations, we can message 2 distinct scenarios that could occur. And this will often be displayed with the most likely value also on the graphic, because this is what we want to emphasize. When we're trying to provide these scenarios, we're not trying to say we have no idea what's going to happen. We're trying to say this is what's most likely going to happen, and here's additional context for you to make better decisions. So it's also used in the extended forecast when our confidence is low, but model forecasts are grouped into different scenarios. And by grouping them into different scenarios, we can actually communicate that lower probability or worst case scenario. So you'll see in this graphic, the less likely scenario, it has a 1 in 3 chance of occurring, but it means wintry mix over North Texas, versus the most likely scenario actually has that wintry mix staying off to the northwest. And our most likely scenario is visually emphasized. What do I mean by this? It's the first thing, it's in the top left. Hopefully you're looking at that first. It's larger and it has additional context. And the scenario probability can be displayed in percent, chance, or fractional odds. You'll see on this graphic it's fractional odds. So what to be aware of? The percentage you see on a graphic like this is actually showing the likelihood of a scenario occurring. It's not saying that if this scenario occurs, this is what your percent chance of freezing rain or wintry mix is. It's only your percent chance of the scenario likelihood. So for our office, we will use fractional odds now. We're going to say 1 in 3, 1 in 4, so that we reduce that interpretation of a pop, of your transfer rain. And what we're going to continue to do is message the broad, and our messaging will be broad, and we'll highlight the potential for our different impacts. So for range forecasts, these are displayed as brackets that show a range of potential values as well as the most likely value for an upcoming event. This is using a specific location during a set time frame. Our values can still fall outside the range. And the size of the range can give you an indication of how statistically confident the forecast is. So, for range forecasts, the legend on here states that 50% of the time the value will fall between the given range. What does this actually mean? So your most likely value, think of it like a field goal, right? Most likely value is going to be that range of your middle 50%, okay? But there's also a 1 in 4 or a 25% chance that the value is lower than what you see, and there's a 1 in 4 or 25% chance that the value is higher than what you see. So you see that most likely value in this situation, 2 inches, the lower bound being 1 inch, and the upper bound being 5 inches. There is still a 50% chance total that the value falls outside of that range. So what you see is that middle 50th, but that's not the whole picture. And then, when it actually comes time to kick, it might just go outside the range, right? You could hit the net and not actually get the field goal. So I'm going to stop there. Does anybody have any questions about range forecasts? Does anybody prefer, do you like this information? Do you want to be able to have this information accessible, like as in like a point and click, if we could add it to our dashboard? Yes? Okay. All right, so what to be aware of with the range forecasts? The range forecasts are for only one time and one location. I'm not talking, if you see a range forecast for DFW, we're not talking about a spatial range of across DFW. If it says a range forecast for Thursday night for DFW, I'm not talking about, well, it's going to go from this to this across Thursday night. It does not directly show you uncertainty across an area or across time. Range forecasts for temperatures look like high and low temperatures at first glance to many people. So we, as an office, are no longer displaying these as range temperatures. You might have seen these graphics, especially if you were in the feedback session. We had a lengthy discussion about how you're interpreting these. So, forecast extremes. How are we going to message this now? You'll see this graphic is one of the newer templates that we're trying out. On the right, our most likely temperature for Thursday night is 21 degrees. But there is it could be colder than forecast, and we have a 10% chance of being this cold. And for the Metroplex area, that's 7 degrees. So we're still going to try and provide you that information so that you can see what those thresholds might be. So this is, in the extended forecast, there's a lot of uncertainty of how strong this cold front's going to be. But we're trying to show you that it could be 7 degrees, which would have infrastructure impacts widespread across our area. And that's what we're trying to highlight. So we're only, again, going to do this when it has an impactful threshold to you guys. That's why we're trying to have conversations about your thresholds, because the better that we can know and learn about that, the better we can serve you. So with the extremes, the high end amounts, that shows a reasonable worst case to prepare for. Your low end amounts show the at least amount to expect. So you can at least expect an inch of snow. So this is displayed in various ways, but it's most often as written text. And when possible, we will actually outline an area in our forecast area with the greater threat for these values occurring. When we can actually narrow down where we think these values are going to fall, we will highlight that for you so you can be aware. Here on this graphic. So our high-end amounts are messaged primarily for you to, as a way for to enhance decision making. And these values only have a 10% chance of occurring. If we have high confidence in these values occurring, we just aren't exactly sure where it might be, then we'll outline an area with a map that says isolated 10% coverage of 5 inches, 8 inches, whatever the environment is, whatever the situation is for that forecast. So what we're doing there is hopefully when we're saying isolated 10% coverage, that is telling you that, well, we have higher confidence that it's going to happen, we just don't know where. It's not, well, there's only a 10% chance that this might occur. That's still important for you to know. But when we have that increased confidence that it might occur, we're going to say isolated 10% coverage. So what to be aware of with this? Our forecasters may message this in certain ways depending on our confidence. So isolated 10% coverage when our forecast confidence in the event is higher, and then a few areas may receive 8+ inches. When the forecast in the event is lower. When we're not 100% sure, we're not very confident that those high-end amounts are going to occur anywhere, but some events we actually do have high confidence that it's going to occur. So our most likely amounts, we'll also use these to allow easy communication of our most likely range.
And this is often for snowfall maps, as you can see on the right.
The range of potential amounts typically gets smaller the closer to the event because we have more statistical confidence as we get closer to the event. So you can see these, it's a number range on this map, but we'll also show range forecasts in other ways like you saw on the map in the previous graphic. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for a few minutes. Does anybody have any comments or questions about probabilistic messaging and graphics? All good? So if I gave you guys a quiz right now, you'd all get 100? Okay.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to the graphics.
Update then. So like I said, we got a lot of y'all's feedback this summer, and we're taking that feedback to heart. We've got a team at the office, and we've been working to improve the way that we're messaging, right? We want to make things simple, we want to make things clean, easy for you to make quick decisions. Okay, so timing. We've got new timing templates. Now these can split into different areas. So there's going to be the one on the left depicts a situation where we have 2 different areas, and the one on the right depicts a situation where we have 3 different areas. So it shows when to pay attention. It does not tell you exactly when the storms are going to hit your area, but it's showing you when we want you to be paying attention. So you'll see that we have an earliest start, a most likely, and an ending by. So we're using probabilistic data in these templates to answer when is the earliest it could be here, when's it most likely going to be here, and when is it ending by. So you'll see these graphics a lot, especially at the start of winter events, and most commonly for severe effects. All right, so we'll also be doing timing graphics like you see here. So the information is located on the left. We've got text information on the left, and then we've got 2 panels of timing on the right. And so this can be used in sort of different environments, right? So where we don't have a clean line of storms coming through, but we still want to provide you with timing information as much as we can. And then here's some examples of 3 panels. So we'll break it down into hour blocks as much as we can. Of course, sometimes this is messy, right? Not every severe event is a very clean event where we can just, clearly state when you need to pay attention. Sometimes we've got all-day things, right, where you're always going to be looking. So these 3 panels allow for more information. And you also notice that our map projection has changed a little bit, so hopefully it's a little bit easier for you to see where the threat areas are. And then we've also got these new graphic styles that we're trying. You might have already seen these this fall and into the winter. So we've got that severe potential Thursday graphic on the left. So you'll see we've got an elevator pitch. The quick what information you need to know is located in the top left. And then we've got additional information in the bottom left. So we're now saying like what has changed, timing, threats. That's where you can go to get that information. And we have our map located on the right. And so this is hopefully a cleaner way and an easier way to provide consistency for where you need to look to get the information on the graphic that you need. All right, that wraps up everything that I've got. Does anybody have any questions or comments before I go disappear?
Maggie, is this National Weather Service wide, or is this just locally in Fort Worth?
These graphics are just local. Yep. The probabilistic effort, of course, is national, but there is still consistency improvements to be made on the national scale with probabilistic messaging. So, all right. Any other questions? Yes.
So, probability-wise, how often do we see outside of the goalposts occurring? Do you have like a swag on how often, right, do we receive those impacts, whether it's less or more?
So are you asking for like verification, how we verify what we're messaging?
Yes, that and like just in general, when you're saying, hone in on what is most probable on our side, we're like, what's most possible? And so I'm just curious on how often are we outside of the goalpost. And that's not a ding to the Weather Service, but it just helps us know how to strategically communicate that internally on some of those risks.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll go back to the field goal graphic to look at it. Okay, so field goal graphic. So if we're just looking at statistical confidence, there's only a 50% confidence that it's going to fall within that range. Sometimes in situations we'll provide you an 80% in that field goal range, and so there's a 10% chance that it falls on either side. And so that it typically is a larger range, which is why we don't want to provide that, especially for winter events, right? Because a middle 80th percent for us could be 0 to 6 inches. And to us, that doesn't seem very helpful to you, right? And so we're trying to focus more on the middle 50th as the most likely. But technically, there is still a 25% chance it's outside, 25% chance it's lower, and 25% chance it's higher. In terms of what verifies, we don't actually have a method for verifying our probabilistic messaging in that sense. But when we're providing this information, especially with the snowfall amounts, we're trying to narrow down that range as best we can. And what we're also using, we might not just be taking the statistics right off the models. We're inputting our forecasters' experience with that. And so we might choose to message this or to not message this based off of our adjusted confidence levels, so that hopefully we're providing you, when we provide you with probabilistic information, we're doing it for a reason. I don't know if that answered your question. But.
Well, thanks.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
I just wanted to say something first on increased topic. I think you bring up a good question. Actually, tying back to what David brought up. So probabilistic messaging, to answer David's question, is actually a big National Weather Service push. And as you listen to this, there's almost a tendency, I'm guilty of this, to kind of, when we get more probabilistic, and there's almost a tendency to perceive us as being a little more wishy-washy, instead of saying, hey, it's going to snow 4 inches tonight. And it almost sounds like we're not as good as we used to. We're just as good as we've always been, and I think we're getting better all the time. Our models are getting better, our meteorologists are getting better, I think. But what's going on here is that traditionally, historically, when we've given you that one number, hey, it's going to be 4 inches tonight, we're leaving a lot of information on the floor. There's a true distribution that exists there. And so we might say we think it's going to be 4 inches, but our confidence may only be 50%. So we're leaving a lot of information on the floor that we think could be helpful to you. And I think the challenge is how to educate everybody and to figure out the best way to enable you guys to utilize and exploit that information. And that's what Maddie and Ted and a lot of our offices really been working so hard to do over the last year or so, is there's a bunch of probabilistic information, confidence information that comes out of the models and comes out of, that we've always historically had this degree of confidence. We're trying to figure out how best to convey that to you so you can make a more complete decision. Yeah, it's 50%, so the field goal, I think, is a really good analogy, and it's almost, it's a little distorted to say, well, there's 25 on one side, 20 on the other. That's the way it's always been. It just hasn't been, we haven't explicitly communicated it in the past. And I think what we're trying to do now is to do that. And so I think what we're trying to do is to seek as much input from you all as far as how we can provide this information to you graphically and in other forms to help you capitalize on the information and exploit it for your own decision making. So there was a bunch of ramble there, so didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Thanks, Tom.
I have something real quick. Dan Brunoff, KRLD Radio. As we get closer to an event, we start to see radar trends. Will these problematic or probabilistic forecasts be updated to this is what's going to happen, this is where the highest impacts will be, and also how will you notify people that the graphics have changed and we have greater confidence in what's going to happen? How do you send out that information when we get closer to an event?
That's a great question, and really important to what we're doing, right? Because we're trying to bridge the gap between, maybe when we issue a severe thunderstorm watch and then when you get a warning on your phone. And so what we're doing now, we have these increased probabilities and we have better modeling to actually bridge that gap with our messaging. So we're increasing what we're communicating over chat and what we're communicating over social media, so that we can get out to you saying, hey, there's increasing confidence in these 3 counties. We're going to outline an area and we're going to confine it as much as we can when we're seeing storms and in that very near-term environment. So we can say, hey, you need to have increased eyes on this for the next few hours or something like that to try and help. I didn't cover those graphics today because that really is not, it's just a thing to be aware of, right? There's increased confidence. That's what we're trying to get across right there. And that's something that we're continuing to work on, trying to do in that short term. But yes, overall, especially with the areas when we're highlighting those high-end amounts, we will confine those areas based off of radar trends, based off of our short-term convective allowing models as much as we can, so that we're not, sounding the alarm for people that we don't need to sound the alarm for, but that we are still highlighting those low probability but high impact amounts as much as we can. All right. Any more questions? If not, then I'll pass it along.
Warnings that we issue. When I say convective, we mean severe thunderstorm and tornado in particular in this one. So this topic kind of came out listening to a couple of y'all at different county and regional emergency manager meetings about how y'all are interpreting and trying to use the information in these to make decisions, especially when it comes to notification systems and what actions you should be taking. So hopefully a better understanding of this will help y'all be better decision makers, maybe make it a little bit easy. That's kind of one of the goals of this, but this is the time to ask questions. And so Ted's ready for it. I know sometimes it sounds like the lapel is dropping out, so hopefully, yes, don't move, just stand there. But we only have one microphone for the running, so Ted, take it away. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Jen, and as Jen gave the introduction here, everybody hear me? Good in the back? Okay. As Jen gave the introduction there, we're actually going to talk a little bit about the old legacy products, the text-based warnings that have been going out for 50, 60 years now. and how much useful information is in there. And I think a lot of people started kind of ignoring it. So we're going to kind of bring that back a little bit just to show you how much good information is in there. I want to talk about warnings first, though. Warnings are binary. You're either in a severe thunderstorm warning or you're not. You're either in a tornado warning or you're not. It's an on-off decision, right? But your decision making on what to do when you're in that warning shouldn't be a binary thing. It should. There's a lot of nuance. You know, a lot of the decisions that you're making could be all across the spectrum. What spectrum is that? Low cost and low risk mitigation, or high cost and high risk mitigation. And let's go through some examples of what that might be. Sheltering a family that's at home at 9 p.m. Tornado warning comes out. It doesn't cost them anything other than a little time and a little fuss to move into their closet. That is a low risk mitigation effort that has a low cost as well. What's a high risk and high cost mitigation effort? Something like if you have an intensive care unit in a hospital, you've got people on life support, you're going to pick up those people and move them into a hallway. You could potentially kill those people. Not only that, hospitals are well-built structures. They can probably take an EF0, EF1, no problem. What if it's an EF3, EF4? So that's an example of a decision that is very high cost and high risk. And of course, this is a spectrum. So let's think about a family that's in a manufactured home. For them to take shelter, they have to leave that manufactured home. They have to get in their car. They may have to go across the street to another well-built house. All that is some sort of risk that they're going to take. They're going to be out in the elements for some period of time. So that's on the lower side of risk mitigation, but it's still something that we have to think about. Activating outdoor warning signs. I think a lot of y'all know about this. You may think, well, that's pretty low cost, low risk, right? I just, pull the big lever. I imagine you have like big lever there that you don't see. But think about it. Some of you have outdoor warning sirens that are solar powered, that have batteries. Maybe you can only get to use them a couple times in the night. What if we have a whole bunch of tornadoes and it's at night, they're not going to get powered? You want to save those outdoor warning siren alerts for the time that it really truly matters, right? Canceling court activities. A lot of your bosses are the county judge. Maybe they got a big court trial going on, and you don't want to tell them to shelter, cancel all court activities to go shelter if they don't have to. Another one, evacuating the football stadium. Don't ever want to interrupt football in Texas, right? I mean, unless you really have to. Not only that, moving, tens of thousands of people from the stands to where? To their cars? I mean, that's not ideal either. That's getting more into high cost, high risk mitigation. And then other ones have economic impact. Let's say you're the EOC at DFW Airport and you have to stop all flight operations to get people into shelter. That's potentially millions of dollars that Congress lost to the airlines. It's probably going to disrupt the national airspace. People in New York are going to have their flights delayed because of that decision. So the whole point of this talk is how can your decisions go from binary to informed? So imagine you have a tornado warning and up in the upper northeast corner of that tornado warning is a hospital. Do you tell that hospital to shelter because they're in the tornado warning? Or do you make a better decision to say that do not shelter the ICU? This time, the highest risk is just for yourself. And so that image on the right there is actually a probabilistic distribution of where the highest threat for that tornado is. Our warnings don't look like this right now. Give us about 5 years and they will. We've actually been testing this for the last 10 years. Some emergency managers have gone up to Norman to provide input on how this would work. So warnings are going to change. They're no longer going to be binary. Let's go about 5 years down the road. But they're going to look like a probabilistic plume of where the highest hazards are going and where they're going to be. So how can your decision go from binary to informed? I think it's fundamental to know how NWS meteorologists are actually creating the warnings. I also think that if you know how to interpret radar and you know a little bit about storm structure, you're going to be able to infer a whole bunch. I'm not going to teach you about storm structure and how to do that part of your job or our job today, because it may not be your job. But we'll provide you some help if you are interested in that. And then finally, we're going to use the important information contained in the warning text. I'll show you where to go, where to find it, and what it means. So, behind the scenes, how are warnings created? This is an example of something that we might see. Okay. All right. So this is the Dallas 2019 tornado. And so NWS meteorologists would be looking at this empty supercell here, and when they make the decision to issue a tornado warning, they're going to take this dot, we call it the vertex, and they're going to put it right where the tornado is at. They're going to go back in time a few frames and then put the dot where the tornado would be a few frames back in time. What this does is create an extrapolated motion. After that, the warning forecaster is going to expand the box. So if you see the box, you use that extrapolated motion for the first guess, and then the warning forecaster is going to adjust the box to decide which area need to be in this tornado warning. So we're thinking about, is this tornado going to turn left or turn right? It's going to increase whatever it is, so the box gets drawn that way. Finally, in our software, we're going to select call to action statements and some other stuff. How bad is the tornado threat? Was it spotted by spotters? Was it radar indicated, etc.? Generate the text up here. The forecaster will have a look over this. They'll type anything they need to, and they'll send the product out. We have a big stop sign to make sure that we actually want to issue the tornado warning. And then as soon as we hit send on that, within about 5 seconds, our phones are going off. So I'll let you know that an experienced forecaster that has decided to issue a warning can probably go through this whole process in about 15 seconds with an easy situation. So very quick from the time, okay, we need to warn, and we're going to. And then the tornado warning is now product on our system. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Maybe you're wondering, well, that's a supercell thunderstorm. That's easy, right? What about a line of thunderstorms? Okay, so we have a line of thunderstorms. We pull up that same warning software again, and this time I got my dot. I'm going to put it somewhere on that line, right? Well, that doesn't work too well. We don't want that long, skinny polygon anymore. We want something that's a little broad. Go up there, hit line of storms on the software, and now I've got 2 points I'm going to put together. I'm going to draw that roughly where the line is at this point in time. Again, I'm going to go back in time, and I'm going to adjust where the line was back in time. This creates an extrapolated motion that we can use to inform a good first guess polygon. After this, I'm going to start cleaning up some of the polygons. I do not look at city names or what city is in and out. What I'm doing is looking more at county. So I took out a tiny, tiny piece of Parker County, and I'm adding a little bit more. And now up here, I'm deciding do I want this tiny piece of Southeast Benton County or Southern Collin County. So I know those names. And then deciding what that polygon's going to look like. Now I took those out because I thought, well, I still got some time. It's still severe. I'll draw a new box when it comes to that point. So I've got this polygon here, and now I'm going to select what hazards, 60 mile-an-hour winds, hail, whatever. The text automatically generates again. Scroll through it. All looks good. And I'm going to send it. Once again, big stop sign. Make sure I'm understanding what I'm about to do, which is bother a lot of people. So, my warning is out, again, within seconds, everybody knows that. We have it on our system, we can have it displayed, and stuff like that. Okay.
So Ted, quick question on this. So in this situation, what if a tornado then had developed kind of within that larger box? What would the meteorologist do? How would we treat that?
It's a good question. We would have to issue a tornado. This is a severe thunderstorm warning. If there's a tornado that develops inside that box, what we would do is draw a tornado polygon on top of that box.
Okay, and kind of going back to the one before, let me see if I can maybe just get to a good spot here. Yeah. So we have 2 storms here. And you issued a tornado warning for the entire top storm, So you've got hail and you've got tornado in there. Why can't we just issue a severe thunderstorm warning to cover the hail part and a tornado warning to cover, where the actual rotation is in that much smaller confined area? What's the thought about just issuing the tornado warning for the entire storm itself? So
we could do that. We could draw up a tornado warning just where the tornado is, and then issue a severe thunderstorm warning where the hail is going or where the wind is. That we have found from post-survey events, actually, people get confused by that. Well, I heard the tornado warning, but then I heard that the severe thunderstorm warning came out, so I thought, maybe the tornado had dissipated. So we like to avoid that when we can. So we tend to make the tornado warning box a little bit bigger to cover all the hazards, the hail, the wind, and the tornado. We know that the tornado is going to be in a specific location, but we also know that a tornado warning is highly visible, might as well get everything in one single box.
Is there a general rule of thumb of how far out in distance, time, or proximity that you are expanding that warning box, knowing that there's a large impact on the local side as far as sirens?
Yes, so most warnings default to about 60 minutes for severe thunderstorm warning. So when that extrapolated motion gets made, it's making that extrapolation out about 60 minutes. For tornado warnings, the default expiration time is 45 minutes. I'll show you some examples of how that works when you have different moving storms, how much bigger the polygon gets fast.
Hey, Ted.
Yes.
So just a quick question. Are you going to go over the destructive damage tag and where that falls into this?
I will, yes.
Thank you.
All right.
One more question on this, Ted. So let's say that northern storm was no longer tornadic. Can you just switch it back to a severe thunderstorm warning, or what's the process for going into that?
So we had a tornadic storm, we issued a tornado warning, maybe it produced a tornado, the tornado dissipated. If I wanted to cancel that tornado warning, I would for sure have to issue a severe thunderstorm warning if there was still wind and hail hazards ongoing. Usually when you have a tornado, you also have wind and hail, but sometimes, especially in the summertime, tropical environments, it might not be that bad. So no, we can't change warnings after we issue. We also can't change the size of the box after we issue a warning. So that first box, that's our best guess, and we're taking a whole bunch of uncertainty. I'll show you an example of that in a little bit.
So typically we would issue the severe thunderstorm warning before we drop the tornado warning if we're doing a thing like that. So there's no delay in like one going off your screen and then another coming back on.
Yeah,
So
we
try
don't
to do
want
that one
something
first.
bad to happen.
Right.
There's no warning out for that 1 or 2 minutes. Yeah.
And so that's a trickier situation. So going from tornado to severe, you're changing the whole box. But if we have a severe thunderstorm warning out first, and then the storm obtains rotation, then we can issue the smaller tornado warning, usually right along the edge there. We're not going to drop the whole severe thunderstorm and issue a whole new tornado. Unless maybe we're getting to the expiration time of the severe thunderstorm warning, like it's about to drop off anyway, and then it starts to rotate, then we'll probably just go with the bigger tornado warning from there. So there's a lot of little nuances that go into what exactly is happening to make those decisions. But one of the times where you might see overlap is where we have a severe thunderstorm warning first, then it gains rotation, and then we go with then we go down to the tornado warning for the smaller area. So
If I could jump in here just a second, I think it's better to narrow that tornado warning to where it is really most likely to occur. If you issue a severe thunderstorm warning first for the broader area and then the tornado warning, you won't have people feeling like they're being downgraded, but you will still have the threats in the appropriate area. Now, if I'm on the air, it's easy for me to explain, all of this region is under a tornado warning, but here is where, the path is likely to be. And that's the explanation I would give on the air.
When we got a well-behaved big supercell, we like to issue it out front and come in behind with the tornado warning section. Fortunately, not all supercells are well-behaved like that, so, but yes, I do agree with that.
Because I know there are a lot of times when I'll get a call or a text or something from a family member saying, "Oh, I see we're under a tornado warning," and I have to say, "Well, don't worry about it. It's going to pass."
You wouldn't show the ICU on that tornado warning.
Right. Exactly.
So, and that's what I kind of wanted to speak to. Thanks for bringing that point up, Dave, because I'm Baylor Scott and White Health. Anytime one of our hospital locations is included in a tornado warning, we're moving patients. And so if there's any way, if there's another indicator that we can use to where we know not to move patients, that's going to be extremely helpful to us. And a little bit concerned that we may be moving patients when it's just for wind or hail or something like that, and not an actual threat of a tornado. So anything that you guys can help us out on that would be phenomenal.
I'll show you how the warning text can help you out on that.
Okay, thank you.
Hey Ted, I have a question.
Yes.
When you're talking about where you find the spot on the map and then you go back to a couple of sweeps before that, and then that's where you start your warning area.
can you repeat that question, Ted? Can you repeat it? Sorry, thanks.
So when he's talking about where he looks at the radar, he finds the spot, and then he goes back several sweeps in order to create that area. And I don't know if I'm just special in my jurisdiction, or somebody else has had the same problems. But usually when you guys do that, the storm has already passed us, and then we're put into a warning after. We're pretty much telling whether we had city council going on, we're telling them it's all clear. we're all good, and then all of a sudden we're put back in a tornado warning after it's already been through.
So, yeah, and that does happen occasionally because as we draw that first box, it's at the current time, but there's a buffer that's back to usually the west that still goes back that far. Again, those warning decisions and those boxes, I think they're a good first guess. They're good for, low cost, low risk mitigation efforts. But if you know a little bit about storms and you know about what's going on, I think that's when you can actually step in and say, we don't have to worry about this one. We're good. Just know that, yes, that western side or that back side does often get included after the worst of storms has moved through. Yes.
Like, we know that, but if we have Everbridge and it picks up the Polygon, then it goes out, and then everybody's like, oh, it's already passed.
So I'll say in 5 years from now, that probability spectrum will show lower probability threat on that back side. And you set your Everbridge threshold to be like 40%. I want Everbridge to be activated or whatever it is. It would ignore those kind of buffer zones around the edges.
Quick question, is there not a consideration of reducing your 60-minute swath of time? I know it's great to try to warn, but we get in the sense of desensitizing our citizens to our outdoor warning sirens when they go off so far in advance, and then it's still sunny at our lake and people are skiing. So is there any consideration in that? Is that like a norm nationally, or is that just we scoped it here what fits us in the metro?
So these are nationally set criteria. They recommend 60 and 45 minutes. Now, forecaster can change them. The problem is if we start reducing 30 minutes, you get less and less lead time for other activities and other mitigation efforts that need to occur. The other problem is that they've discovered that our tornado warning statistics actually get worse the shorter duration warning is. So 45 minutes is where we stand to be. You might have seen some articles that say Weather Service is getting worse at predicting tornadoes. No. Back in 2012, we made a decision to go to 30-minute tornado warnings. We did. It takes the stats across the board, and so we decided we're actually getting more lead time with 45 minutes, even though there's more false alarms, especially on that other end of the Polygon. So that's why I'm here talking to you today, to be like, it's okay to sit on that big lever you got in the EOC on some situations. And let's move on with some of this, and I think a lot of this will open up and become more clear to you. Okay, so back to our squall line here. We do update severe thunderstorm warnings as well. And what we do is we're 30 minutes after the initial warning was picked up here. What I'm going to do is select the update product. And so in this situation, I select the update product. It's a little hard to see, but you can see that the vertex where the line was on is actually a little bit back into the meat of the line, and the line is actually sped up since the last time I drew out that warning. I can then add some more vertex, and I can make that vertex and that leading edge of that line right along the edge of where the word is going to be, that squall line. Once again, I am adjusting the box just slightly to make sure I can keep Tarrant County in that warning. I don't want the software to drop Tarrant County just yet, but it is going to drop, I believe, Johnson County from this warning. So it's like my hazard. Maybe I got an 80-mile-an-hour wind report in Arlington, and I want to make sure that people in Dallas know that this is the real deal and it's up now. So the text bar comes up because the warning's being canceled. I have to do a little bit of editing for Johnson County. So I'm just going to say that the warning moves on out. Therefore, the warning is being canceled. Farther down, I've got the rest of this warning text, and I've got a call to action now that says this is a dangerous situation. And I'm typing in that in Arlington, for example, 70, 80-mile-an-hour winds were reported. So that's some useful information there. Okay. So warning sizes and timing, if you haven't figured it out already, when you see those really long, narrow, skinny warnings, what that means is you've got a really, really fast storm motion. So in this case, I got a storm on the top. You said 55 miles an hour. You can see that I dropped that 1 hour box. Gives me a really long runway, right? The storm on the bottom, you said 5 miles an hour. You can see that initial box, much shorter, only covers 1 county. So just remember, long warnings are a sign of very fast storm motion. The ticks that the forecaster sees here is actually every 6 minutes in this case. So the forecaster can actually time out where that storm will be in 30 minutes, an hour, or whatever, by just counting up the ticks. Now, you guys won't have that information when you see the warning text, but I think you do know that if you're on the left side of a storm that's moving to the east, that threat is imminent. If you're on the eastern side, you've got a little bit more time to prepare. Yeah.
Going back to this one here, so the last tick mark says 2052, but I see a time that says 2058 on there. So so the expiration time is 2058 or 2100. So the far eastern portion of the box, or the far right of the box, that is the expiration time. Don't look at the tick marks of the line if they're correct. I mean, without anything you wanted to expand on that, but the edge of the box is the expiration time, and it does account for the speed of the motion and time to get out that way.
Right, and it also accounts for the uncertainty that storm could move a little bit faster, so that's why it's a little bit beyond that final point, that era where that's the estimate of where it will be next one. So, I talked a little bit about how the forecasters are deciding the final Polygon extent. Forecasters assess the uncertainty of the current future storm motion. So imagine you've got a supercell over the middle of Ventura County, and we think that the storm has been so far moving east-southeast, but we think it's going to start turning to the right, as sometimes storms do. The problem is that extrapolate box doesn't know how to turn storms to the right, right? So the forecaster might get in here and think, all right, I've got to maybe draw the warning a little bit farther to the south, or maybe they're thinking that it's a hail threat right now, but it's going to develop to where there's a big wind threat on the south side of the storm. And so what the forecaster is doing when they're changing the box is thinking about all those uncertainties, uncertainty of motion, uncertainty of hazards, and trying to draw a box that's going to cover all of that. So that box now, this is why some of those boxes start looking a little different than what I've showed you. You get these kind of weirdly drawn boxes, and because the forecaster is wrestling with all that uncertainty inside through that evolution and hazard location, trying to get an initial first guess warning. Again, we can't change the size of the box once one issues, so we tend to be a little bit liberal with how we draw those warnings on that first issuance, because we're thinking, what's it going to look like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes from now? We really don't know. So a review about how we're doing the warning. Forecasters are tracking the worst part of the storm and using the previous motion to take the impacted areas. There is almost always more time to make a decision on the opposite end of a warning polygon, meaning that you don't have to make that decision just yet. You can wait a little bit to see how the storm falls. Forecasters can't expand that warning, so initial warnings tend to have a more generous buffer zone for the uncertainties up to an hour later. So the threats inside a warning may vary in time and space. So this is a look at what the warnings will probably look like in 5 years from now, with these clues of where the worst of the tornado is going to be headed. We think that this is really going to help some of that more complex decision making. So it's coming. It's just not going to be here for a little while. There could also be multiple severe threats in one box. This is the Wiley hailstorm with 5-inch diameter hail in Wiley. When we were issuing the warnings with it, we were playing baseball with stopwatch hail associated with the storm. But of course, the box is drawn big enough where there's quarter-size hail on the northern side of that storm, and there's 60-mile-an-hour winds on the southern side of that storm. So we're accounting for different magnitudes and different types of hazards with that same box. Different magnitude. This is the Dallas, I think 2019 crane collapse. Is that what it is? Yeah. So, big outflow boundary and storms coming in from the north. Fort Worth had 50 to 60 mile-an-hour winds, but the warning was issued for 70 mile-an-hour winds. And that 70 mile-an-hour wind area was actually where the storms actually tracked. So, somebody knowing a little bit about radar and knowing a little bit about storm evolution would know, okay, I've got a warning that says 70 mile-an-hour winds are expected with this hazard here on this warning. But I'm in Fort Worth. Do I need to sound the sirens for 70 mile-an-hour winds? That's what the warning says. Typically, no. That's been your call. But if you knew a little bit about this, or if you read chat that we think that the worst part of the storm is across Dallas County, you can hold off on some of those decisions.
So Ted, in that example though, what cities would be listed in the warning? Like, would the PACCAST be tracking the 70 to 80 mile an hour, or like how? That's a big warning box to cover a lot. So what are we gleaning out of that?
Well, we'll get into what PACCAST is in a little bit, but at this point, it depends on how the forecaster drew the warning. If they drew it as a line of storms, it's going to mention all the cities that are affected by that line of storm. All cities here will be affected by either the outflow boundary or the actual storm itself.
And what is a great tool that EMs could use to try and glean a little bit more or get some more information about these different
Okay. My next slide.
Chase
Yes. If you go back one slide, sorry. If we're in Slack, right, is what you have depicted and written inside that box a consideration that you all would provide us to be able to interpret this warning?
That's what I was trying to get at. Yes, hopefully updates in NWSChat 2.0 or y'all asking questions of that. That's a really big box. What are the separate threats within that box would help break it down a little bit more. Plus, in addition to what Ted's going to talk about here in a little bit.
Usually, when we're talking about a magnitude threat that's higher, like 70, 80 mile an hour winds, we're going to tell you where that core, that really the worst is going to be. Just because we know that box might be too big, and not everybody's going to see the 70 to 80 mile an hour winds. So we'll focus on the messaging and where the core is. We always do this with tornadoes. We always tell you where the circulation is and where it's tracking.
But you graphically show it. Sometimes it gets lost in the words, right? If you have a lot of words, we're trying to like decipher a bunch of words coming out of it, per se. But are y'all like graphically gonna circle this real quick on your screen and be like, here's your main concern? Like,
so that is a great idea. We haven't done a severe weather season yet with NWSChat 2.0, but I think there's a lot of things that we can do to really help communicate that kind of threat.
That's the kind of question that we need to ask.
Yes.
What we're asking is a big, I mean, I'm not to jump in here, but I mean, tactically, like in the moment, there's somebody that has to be, there's a forecaster that has to be, one person chatting, and then someone actually has to make that graphic reply, but I'm hearing you, Chase, that's something that would be useful to you. So that's kind of, how do we resource that tactically minute to minute, because it sounds like that's something that would be useful.
I would get more out of that than reading a bunch of words.
So just to highlight, so we've only had a couple of major severe weather events, and we have tried with that before. So right now it just depends on the forecaster. We're kind of still learning how to quickly pass this information over. If it's just simple screen grab or special software that we have. So we've tried it here and there, but it's still something that needs to be kind of finalized internally.
And Ted, you said that full experienced forecaster could put a warning out in 15 seconds. So why wouldn't, in a case like this, you put out separate warnings for Tarrant County and Dallas County to highlight those differences?
So yeah, in this case, actually one warning box was issued for all of Tarrant and Dallas County. I don't know who the forecaster was that did it, but that was their call. That's just how it got wrong. Sometimes forecasters, they would love to do smaller warnings, but they know that each small warning they do is going to be another workload that they're trying to keep up with. So sometimes it gets really busy and forecasters are just getting stuff out as fast as they can, and so you get a little bit more nebulous stuff than this. What we will do though is when we have 70 or 80 mile an hour winds, and we've already got like an existing big box, we'll issue a severe right on top of that, because the 80 mile an hour wind will now trigger the WIA, or the baseball size hail will trigger the WIA. We would want to send a WIA alert for this entire area, suddenly 80 mile an hour start itself. In Dallas, what we would do is draw a little box, a much smaller, like a targeted tornado warning, where we know we can set off the WIA alerts and not confuse everybody that, well, we're only got 50 mile an hour winds, it didn't even rain over here. Well, yeah, we don't want to do that kind of thing.
That was not an option by this year. That was something that came after. So I was looking at this. It could be a possibility that the initial warning, they only knew or suspected 50 to 60 miles per hour, and then the 70 to 80 developed within it type thing. Which now with media, we have a better chance to separate that out. But.
Okay, so let's review about this, and this was that number 2 bullet. And one needs to know a little bit about radar interpretation and storm structure to know where the exact hazard types and magnitudes are expected. So we do offer a basic radar interpretation course for EMs. If you are interested in learning a little bit more about how to read radar and how to integrate it into your severe weather understanding, it is on YouTube. I think our channel is at NWS Forward. It's on YouTube.
Yes,
okay.
It's publicly facing, or this video is publicly facing, so it's there already.
Just send the email to Jen.
We'll include a link to it when we send out the
And then otherwise, if you don't want to learn about weather, I totally understand it. I don't want to learn anything about your job either. So NWS meteorologists will provide updates in NWSChat of when and where significant hazards are located. So yeah, we're not going to provide a globe-by-globe update on quarter-size hail with 60 mile an hour winds. but we absolutely will start getting in 70, 80 mile an hour baseball side hail with tornadoes. We're going to give you where that worst is and where it's headed. So let's talk about the warning text. If you've ever looked at a warning before, hopefully you've seen them before, but basically they're all structured the same way. Up at the top, it has a type of warning, whether it's a severe, a flash flood, a tornado warning, etc. What counties, until when, and then what's the hazard? Is there a source? So the hazard will be 60 mile an hour winds, it could be 80, it could be a tornado, whatever the hazard is, it'll put it right there in hazard. And then the source, whether it's radar indicated or spotters or emergency manager reported, etc. So sometimes that ground truth report can help you increase your confidence. You see a warning for tornado, source, storm spotter, so you know, okay, it's actually occurring. That's kind of a big deal. You scroll down on that warning a little bit more. There's this whole section called pathcast, and we're going to talk about how that gets generated and how you can actually use that section telling you your decision. And then finally, at the very bottom of the warning, if you don't like to read a lot of things, at the bottom of the warning, there's something that's always called a tag. It basically lists out the hazard right at the base of the warning, what the size of the hail is, or what the wind is, or if there's a tornado, etc. So how does that pathcast get generated? Let's go back to that example where I had the forecaster was looking at this warning here, and they had this, northern Tarrant County in it. What we have is a city's shapefile, and I've displayed it here so that you can see all the squiggly lines of how all the city jurisdictions are drawn out. And the pathcast, if you can't read it here, actually says these severe thunderstorms will be near Fort Worth, Keller, Wisconsin, Saginaw, Hamlet around 8:25 a.m. and then North Richmond Hills around 8:30, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So where is it getting at? Fort Worth, if you're sitting in Fort Worth, you might think, if you're reading this, well, Fort Worth, I live in downtown Fort Worth, the storm's going to hit me. Well, no, that's not true. The software is not smart enough when it kicks out of the city, say North Fort Worth. There's a little tendril of Fort Worth that stretches all the way up to North Tarrant County. The software says, hey, that's Fort Worth, picks it up, puts it in the warning. That's good if you're the emergency manager at Fort Worth, right? You know, you got something going on in your area. It's not so great if you're John Public and you read the pathcast, or if you're in South Fort Worth. That doesn't help you much. You might not even see range. So I'm going to go through all the cities that got saved down in this one. So that first one is Fort Worth, Keller, with Saginaw, Hamlet around 8:25. So it's tracking, again, that vertex and that worst part of the storm. Then it adds in South Lake, North Richmond Hills, Hollyville, First, Bedford, Grapevine around 8:55, Smooth around 9 a.m. So you notice that all those stars are clustered and they are listed as where those tick marks would be with that storm. Finally, there's other locations impacted by the storm, including Westlake, Marsh Creek, and Grapevine Lake. Those other locations, where does that come from? Basically, those are locations that are in the warning Polygon box, but they are not being tracked by that path, by the path of where the forecaster put the warning that's going on there. So, other locations doesn't mean, go out and have your picnic. It means you're in the warning, you still got to watch out, but it's probable that the worst of the storm is going to pass to your south, right? Okay. Let's talk about that example where we drew that warning a little bit bigger because of either motion or hail or wind extremely farther south. Again, I'm going to put up the city files here. Here's what pathcast looks like this time. It's largely the same. I put stars with pathcast picks up the city name, and you can see they're all clustered right where that extrapolated motion goes. So that's where the forecaster is thinking the worst part of that hazard or the worst part of the storm is going to be. And the other locations included are those dots. You can see that those are around the outer ring. So if you're an emergency manager in Arlington or Grand Prairie, those are not explicitly listed in this warning, it's because that pathcast or that line does not go over Arlington or Grand Prairie directly just yet. It might be an indication that the forecaster thinks the storm could develop and impact Arlington and Grand Prairie, but that's a more uncertain decision, a more uncertain thing that could happen. Basically what it means is probably you can watch and wait for some of those higher cost, higher mitigation efforts, right? If you actually saw your city listed, it means, okay, you're under the gun. What time? Okay, so let's review. Use a warning Polygon means warning updates of situational and spatial awareness. Does this warning cover my area? So basically, that's number one, right? It's this warning impact me. That's the first thing you can look at. Check the tag. I like to check the tag, or you check the hazard in the morning. The tag displays on NWSChat right away. It says, electrical warning for golf ball size table. If golf ball size table is a trigger point for your decision that you need to make, then, you you continue on. You see, all right, well, am I in the path gap? Am I going to be where the worst of this storm is going to track? And you can find out that question by, is my location or a nearby city located in that path gap? And I say a nearby city, let's say you're, Richland Hills and North Richland Hills. Richland Hills is a tiny city, and the software is not going to pick up every little tiny city. But if you see, well, Richland Hills is in there, and Euless is in there, and Bedford's in there, you can probably assume that Richland is also in that one. And then finally, if you're in that downstream gray area where you're not in the other locations listed, or maybe you are, but you're not in the ones with a path gap at a specific time of being infected, that might be an indication that you're in that kind of gray area. It means maybe check the radar out a little more. Look at NWSChat for more information, etc. Okay, because I am an analytical mind, I love flowcharts. Maybe this flowchart will help you guys. I'm glad you brought up Irving. So Irving isn't listed directly because the storm's not going to really get there. And if it moves at the expected speed, it's not going to get there until after the current warning expires. If the storm maintains this intensity, what will happen is Irving will probably be in the next warning that hits you guys.
Right.
It'll be like a really long lead time if you're on that edge of that box. If the storm were to speed up, the warning update definitely would pick up that Irving is going to be impacted. So those are those gray areas, those buffer zone decisions. You think of a warning as a probabilistic spectrum of where the worst of the hazard is going to be. Around the edge is usually going to be where your lowest threat hazard is going to be during that time. Right in the center, right where those path cities are listed out, that's where your highest threat is. That's the whole point of this talk. So I think there's a lot of good, valuable information in there, and it might really help you make some of those more difficult decisions. Any other questions before we continue?
Yeah, Ted, for first half of my career, warnings were for entire counties. And you could have a tornado coming into Lancaster and DeSoto in southern Dallas County, and people in Carrollton and Richardson would be under a warning. So these polygons are a big improvement. The plumes look like they will be a much bigger improvement, and you're already showing illustrations of them. So my question is, why is it going to take 5 years before that becomes accurate?
Because they've been telling us 5 years for the last 20 years. Okay. I would say, don't get hung up on 5 years exactly. Don't come into an IWT in 5 years and say, where's my hazard? I know, you know more, but
yeah, I think they've done in 5 years. I got a couple people in weather service headquarters back there probably saying that remark, but no, I actually, the science has been there to do this stuff. What's the big hang-up? Well, the hang-up is actually the communication with the legacy infrastructure, how warnings have been transmitted, that warnings can't be expanded. What they're actually going to do is have warnings that move in time, so like a single warning, it just updates every 5 minutes and moves, and the forecaster says the threat's weakening. It's going to be a brave new world. So we've got this stuff, all the cool animation stuff, that we have on the test bed, and the science is there. The science is ready to do this stuff. The problem is that actually the broadcast partners are holding everything up here. The problem is the dissemination structure of how warnings have been transmitted for eons. We're still kind of locked in that. We've got to break down that communication and dissemination barrier before we move on. That's the whole thing.
I got a question since I'm on the radio, I warn people, especially when they're driving. And sometimes, do all the warnings on the text warnings include mile markers?
They will. Sometimes we take that out in the Metroplex. It's a giant list of every interstate mile marker in the Metroplex, which are a whole bunch of stuff. But especially for rural warnings, the warnings are defaulted to list. This will impact I-35 between mile markers.
Right.
60 and 40. A lot of times forecasters will take them out if they think like it's not really, we're going to have that in there. But I think for tornado warnings, though, we usually leave that stuff in there. Okay. Because people on the road kind of, do I need the shelter or not?
Is that auto-generated or is that?
It's also auto-generated.
It's also auto-generated.
I think for the most part, most people leave the mile markers on 35 and the big ones. I think it has a priority.
But we get mile markers like for 820 and like.
Yeah, it kind of depends on how much is in there, but I-30 or I-35, I know I think it's a higher priority on listed.
Right, right. Especially in rural areas where there aren't as many landmarks. Yeah.
So, wow. Mine is just kind of a point of clarification. You said you envisioned we had this big lever that we activated the sirens with. And actually for us, and I can't speak for everybody, but for us, when you create that polygon and it falls over an identified area, that's what sets our sirens off, unless we disable that. So even if you draw the polygon on the north side of our city, it's going to set all the sirens off. We've got it just where it sets all of them off. So even that in the southern part of the city gets activated, unless we're monitoring. Typically I disable that so that I can make the call, but in the middle of the night, or if it pops up quickly, we just leave it on. So actually you are activating our sirens.
So I figured a lot of the situation was like that. That's probably okay most times. Again, that's a low cost, low risk. Not only that, people are getting woken up by their phones. Most people have WEA alerts turned on, and they're going to ask you, well, how come my phone went off and my siren didn't, right? So I think those auto-generated things are probably okay most times. When we get into the future and have these probabilistic warnings, you'll be able to set, well, how about just a 10% chance that we actually set off outdoor warning sirens for this situation. So there's going to be a lot more nuance in decision making coming up, but right now I think that that's perfectly acceptable. So. Yeah.
Are you going to talk about the destructive wind tag?
So some tags will have like considerable or destructive on it, right?
Yes, my question was more in regards to now with the destructive wind tag activating our phones through EAS. Is there for the group consideration, or have you as a city already moved to activating your sirens based off of that as well? Is there anyone that has changed their policy, like auto activation for tornado warning? Are y'all auto activating for winds if Weather Service sends out the destructive wind tag?
So that would be for like 80-mile-an-hour winds with baseball-sized hail. Gets a destructive tag, and those severe warnings will set off in people's phones inside that box. So kind of like the tornado warning example, that people, get their phone buzzing, they'll want to know, well, how come they don't do a warning siren?
And that's why I'm asking the question, because we were asked the question, right, from our elected officials plus our citizen base. And obviously the answer is no right now because they're not auto activated. But there's a lot of interpretation that we would have to make in that case. So.
Hey Ted, and I can't speak for the jurisdictional city county, but I can tell you for a school district, we require our campuses to take the same actions they would take for a tornado warning if they receive a WEA alert. Okay.
Yeah, I'm positioning myself between you guys and lunch, so I'll be quick. So just a caveat about, I want to go back to the plume for a second, because 20 years from now, that's going to be how you guys give warnings well, at some point in the future, there won't be polygons. There will be a computer that's putting out plumes, but the challenge is that what you saw up there was eye candy. That was a perfect idolized plume coming off an extremely beautiful supercell that is extremely well behaved. In reality, weather, as we are painfully aware, is very, very messy. And so in the future, you'll probably see, we talk about plumes, there'll be a probabilistic map that will come out, but it may be very messy. It will not be a plume. It might, if it's a squall line or something, it might be a very messy looking thing. This is the challenge, and again, I want to pontificate. This ties back to Maddie's talk. It's like we're going to a probabilistic world where right now we're trying to do something in a binary fashion with a warning. You're in a warning, you're not in a warning. And the reality is that there's 1,000 shades of gray. There's a tapestry of probability of threat within a given area. And the challenge is for us to try to figure out how to communicate that, and more importantly, how you guys make decisions based off it in an ever more complex world. That was just one thing I was going to say, is that plume, don't get too hung up on that beautiful plume. That was a perfect supercell in Tuscaloosa County, Alabama, and it ain't always going to be like that. So sorry to steal your thunder and stuff.
We'll have more training on probabilistic quantum when we come around in 5 years, so don't you worry about it now.
All right, thank you very much, Ted. We are going to transition over to our last presentation here now. We're just going to have, there aren't as many slides with this. No, it just doesn't want to work today. And so, but it's on NWSChat. We really just wanted to spend some time just kind of touching base with how it's going. Hey, Miles. Want to do it? I want to. Somebody's doing it. Okay. Have some discussion about how it's going, and some discussion between, what else we might need from it, what we can do with it, things like that.
All right, like Jen said, it's not very many slides. I know it's lunchtime. So, I'm going to go over a couple of updates. I know this is the first large meeting we had since we've had Slack or NWSChat 2.0. So I will give Miles some time, in a couple of minutes, to have a little bit of a discussion. But before we get to that, you probably all saw the updates that happened last week. If you haven't signed in to Slack or NWSChat 2.0, I would suggest you do that. It's a pretty similar interface, but they did add some additional icons that will give you the option to quickly change between your home chat. If you have any DMs before, they used to kind of get lost in the plethora of lists and channels that you were in. Now you see there is a DM button that should be off on the left. Any activity, any interactions that happen with your post, you'll see it in the little bell icon. And you can explore that far left column. I'll leave it at that and give you some time. Explore it before our next weather event. If you have any questions, if you have any issues, feel free to ask us if you need any help. For registration, so the registration link, the original registration link that was sent out when we first moved over from 1.0 to 2.0, that has changed. So if you were to have the original email that gave you that registration link and you forwarded that over to someone new that is incoming, that will not work. So here is the new registration link. There's a QR code there. If you send them the old one, it's probably going to redirect them to the new one as well. But just thought we'd let you know that that link is not valid anymore. We can't register you or a member of your team into NWSChat. That is something that they must do on their own. They will go through the series of questions that will then get sent over to Jen and her team to make sure that the person has the credentials to be in NWSChat. And then last week, I believe those that were initially signed up, kind of the first wave, got an email to verify their account. So you will be asked to verify your account twice per year. And the timing will depend on when you were onboarded. So I think, again, the first series came out this past week. And it will contain an email with a link that you will then go on. And I think there's going to be a quick, pretty fast process to complete that. But if you don't complete this process, you will have several reminders. And if you ignore those reminders, your account will be deactivated. So again, I would suggest you look into that. So there's going to be a looks good button once you click on that link. If everything looks good, you're good for another probably 6 months. If you have any issues with the NWSChat account, go ahead and send an email to nws.partnersupport@noaa.gov. That's going to be your main support when it comes to any software issues with NWSChat.
Hey, Juan, real fast, sorry, I thought of this, if you go back. So if y'all move jurisdictions too, I thought it was going to be easier for us at the local level to update your contact information, but it's not working right as it is right now. So if you change jurisdictions, phone numbers, email addresses, or anything, you need to email that partner support email. That's the fastest way to get to the admins, and they will update and validate your account for there too. So I think in the initial training we talked about coming to me. It's not working like how they needed to, so it has to go through the national chat admins right now. So just one thing I just thought of that we didn't think of yesterday.
Awesome, thanks, Jen. All right, and those were the reminders. Now we'll pass it on over to Miles to have a little discussion here.
Perfect. Can y'all hear me, everyone? So most of y'all are probably a new face. My name is Miles Langfeld. I started at WFO Fort Worth a little over a year ago now. So I've been kind of in the background in NWSChat, doing the beep bop boop, accepting y'all into NWSChat. And so happy to say now we've got around 1,250, 1,270 of y'all inside of our channel at this time. I think it's the most out of any office in the country, maybe one of the biggest. I think we are the biggest, so pat on the back, props to y'all. But it makes sense. We've got 46 counties in our WFO, spanning all the way from Red River down to Temple Killeen, Abilene, over to Tyler. Thinking all of the emergency managers in that area, school districts, public health, all different types of jurisdictions. We've got a lot of people in our chat. So we are having a lot of people in our chat, a lot of collaboration, and we really want this chat service to be something that's easy to use and that it's a very effective mode of communication. So we want to open this discussion. We want to hear your thoughts. Scratch that. I'm going to up the stakes a little bit. We really need your thoughts on how this is going. We want to know, we've had this in service for the last several months. It's been through a couple of weather events, some that are not as big. Probably the biggest was the flooding event down in southeast Dallas and Kaufman and Ellis we had a few weeks ago. But we want to know how things have been going. So I'll open the discussion to anyone and everyone. Are there any concerns, suggestions, room for improvement, anything at all? And if we have to bribe you for candy, we will. What's working? Yeah.
Anytime that you can, like we said earlier, graphically show us something, especially there's been a few times where you've thrown a graphic on there that had times on there for when we anticipate a certain jurisdiction would be impacted. Those are really beneficial because either we're trying to watch one of our news channels because they're going to maybe show it graphically on a screen for us, or we're trying to type it into chat to get a better idea, but then we don't want to bother you because it's hopping on your site, so we feel bad about asking, but we really do need to know because we've got an event going on. If you just had the forethought, if we had some of those graphically depicted on there, it really helps us on the back end make some of the decisions. And especially for hail as well, if we have a really big area and we've got, whatever size hail predicted, if you're showing us just circle on a map, like where we think that that's going to be, I'm not great at interpreting some of those on radars, but if I can see that y'all are scared about this or concerned about this particular area, it helps reduce my anxiety on figuring out, are we going to need to activate the sirens or not, based off of, the hail.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else? Things you hate, things you love. So we really want to hear both. There's things that you love that we're doing that you want us to know that we need to keep doing. Let us know about that. There are things that we are missing, you just brought up. Let us know, because we really want to make this chat service the best it can be, especially since it's new. We're trying to tailor this to be the best it can be.
Miles, I think we can call on some of our media partners here. So I think Mr. Kyle has to.
Yeah, one of Miles wanted me to talk. Kyle Roberts from WFA. I guess I just kind of wanted to explain a little bit about our setup when it comes to the chat and how we utilize it during severe weather coverage. Now, granted, we haven't been through a major or significant weather event that's affected, whether it's a squall line moving across the entire area or, countless supercells or something like that across the entire area. We've not gone through a chat event with that just yet, but so we'll see how it handles. I think it'll be just fine. I don't have any major complaints about the chat so far, and I think overall it's an improvement from what we had before. But I wanted to explain kind of how we use it and what we do, and then what would be very helpful to us from y'all. First of all, during a significant severe weather event, if we're doing extended coverage on TV or online, or we're just doing repeated cut-ins, whether that's every commercial break or every other commercial break or something like that, the camera that we're using on TV, we have a TV screen, probably actually bigger than these ones here, literally right next to that camera that has a dedicated feed for the chat. So we are talking on air, out of the corner of our eye, we're seeing what's being posted in the chat as well. Now, we understand that a lot of that information is preliminary, a lot of it's reported, and so we try not to, say, with absolute certainty that something gets posted in the chat that like, hey, this is confirmed, we know this happened or whatever. We know that, and so that's why we're very careful with the language that we use. That whatever gets posted there is reports of this, reports of that, blah blah blah, so that we're not just throwing erroneous information out on TV. So the more information, the better from what y'all are seeing. It's helpful to us, but with great power comes great responsibility. At the same time, we can't read everything, and if everything's getting posted very quickly, it can get buried very quickly. And I know y'all see that as well, especially during a very active situation. So I wrote down some notes here. I'm very happy we can get pictures now. That's very helpful, but that can quickly bog down the chat too. I know you can minimize them, and for our dedicated chat feed, we'll probably have those minimized where you have to click on them to be able to actually expand and see the picture, because if everybody's sending in pictures, all of a sudden important information from the Weather Service or anybody else is going to quickly get lost for us. I'd also say, once again, with great power comes great responsibility. Pics are great, but in a squall line situation moving across the area, a 2-inch tree limb down in a neighborhood, not helpful. Maybe just a quick note on that one. We don't need to see every single tree limb that's down. Now, if it's an isolated situation, microburst or whatever in your community, yeah, or a more rural location, very helpful. But squall line moving across the area and a bunch of dime-sized hail, sonic ice-sized hail, leaves and tree, small tree limbs down, pictures of clouds, not very helpful unless it's something that's really important, because it is going to bog down the chat for us. So I'm very happy we can get the pictures, but I also don't want to see a situation where it becomes a hindrance for us. A couple other things I've noticed. If you have updates to something, don't bury it in a reply or a thread. I know we can reply to stuff now, but the way that we see the chat, especially if we're on air, you have to click to expand that reply. So if it's an important update or important new information and you do it as a reply to whatever your original post, or maybe the Weather Service's original post, we won't see that right away. We'd have to go and click on it, and if we're the one on TV, well, I'm going to be talking, or we're going to be talking, we won't have that ability to go and click the reply. So if it's new important information, just post it as a new comment or whatever. Don't reply to something. Replies are great, I think, in certain circumstances. But once again, if it's new and important information, please don't post it as a reply or in a thread or whatever, because we will never see it. I don't want to turn IWT into a siren discussion, but since Ted already opened that Pandora's box, we can go into it. But I don't have anything bad about that. I do have just telling us when you're sounding your sirens is great, and telling us why you're sounding them is very helpful too, so we can communicate that to the public as well. I know we've tried to have general rule of thumb for why everybody's sounding the sirens, but it is helpful to know in certain situations why you're sounding them. Also for communities that don't have the ability to differentiate where you sound them. I think like with Ted's talk, northern Plano might be in a warning, southern Plano's not, but the warnings are going off for the entire city of Plano. We understand that, but that's where we just would like to know that information as well. And I know I think like UTA can sound, or has siren, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody here's from UTA, but I'm just using it as an example, has sirens on campus, and those sometimes can be sounded for lower criteria because people are outdoors or outdoor events, and people in Arlington will hear those, but the city of Arlington's not sounding sirens, and vice versa, and so it is very helpful for us to get that information. I think that's really it for kind of what helps us out. The more information is the better, but you know, once again, it's just using it to the best of your ability, especially with pictures and things like that. And I'm obviously open to any comments and suggestions for us as the media as well. But one final thing for the Weather Service, this thought had popped into my head. For when y'all issue warnings, just the information that goes into the chat as the text, can that be changed, or is that across the board? Like, because I know it's the tags are in there. The only thing I'm wondering is, can the speed be added to that? Like the speed of the storm?
Speed of motion?
Yeah.
I can follow up with the developers and see if that can be added. You mean in the...
Like, you know, with a warning, tornado warning,
yeah,
and the tags, all the severe thunderstorm warning, and all the tags will be in there.
follow that up as a suggestion in the feedback channel, but I don't know because of how it parses out. It might not, since it's in this section above, it might not be able to, but certainly a suggestion you can make.
Okay. That's the only thing that, like, in a really quick situation, we actually have to click on to get that information. Then you have to open it up, and so if that was just in there right away, it would be very, very helpful to us as well. So, sorry for rambling. I'm on TV, so that's what I do. But all that would be very, very helpful for us, and we thank you all for everything. We also know that pictures, I know there was an issue about like terms of service and stuff like that, that we're not allowed to, that we can't just take pictures and throw those directly on TV, so we understand that too. But, you know, if y'all do have a good picture of something, we may reach out to you directly asking if it is okay to use that on TV. We know we can't just grab it automatically. So maybe be on the lookout for that if y'all do have something good that we could potentially grab, but we need your permission to do that as well. So, all right, that's all I got.
I want to add something to the picture part. Is there any way for people, can they do this legally? Can we, if they say, they post a picture, you can use my picture on media and just add that tag? Well, I mean, that way we know we can, use it. And also,
I'm fine with that, but that's sort of a service thing that I don't know.
yeah, I'm not real sure if that's possible. But I'll tell you what, thank you for everything that you guys have done. But it's so important that YouTube, I know we're getting a little off the chat, but the YouTube link to do radar analysis, do it. Because so many of your questions will be answered just by knowing and being able to interpret radar data. I know a lot of you aren't meteorologists, but that will help you a lot in identifying the polygons. Should I sound the siren? Should I not? Just by looking where the hail core is, where is the rotation? Is it right turning? Is it shooting north and dissipating? So there's a lot of things in just remembering what you see during each event, along with gaining knowledge of interpreting radar data will help you guys a lot answer your own questions while you're in the heat of the moment. So,
thank you both for all of that, especially stuff on things that need to be in chat and do not need to be in chat. We'll have a few local office policy reminders at the end of this presentation. That's going to include a lot of what he said. Any other things that you like, dislike? Any features that you'd like to see included that we can take to NWSChat administrators that they can include in the chat?
Over here. I will say I miss the active live radars that we used to have in the old one, because it helps a lot not having to part two different screens with the chat and the radar. If you have both, it makes it a lot easier.
And I would add one other thing. I know we can't do it at this time, but you have the yellow boxes for each of the Weather Service lines, but I would certainly love to see the color highlight of the text that we had in the past. So that's something that you bring up with
quite a lot.
If we could change both of those, we would have done it by now. But we keep screaming it, so we'll see what happens. But yes, we agree with y'all on that. The built-in though part, the radar, I don't know if that will ever be able to come back, because it might be something that's kind of done within the Weather Service. I don't know if done within Slack platform, because I don't know how that would operate, but we've had lots of comments on that too. So we'll keep pushing both of those comments back up. So appreciate you mentioning those again.
Anything else before we move on? Yes.
I like, there's my phone close up.
So I really appreciate from the local perspective that I can have Slack up and operational on my desktop 24/7, 365, and not have to worry about logging in or anything like that. And then same for like on our phones with push notifications. It's just such an easier platform to manipulate and just keep awareness generally around like everyday weather. And then more so when, you know, events are happening. That is just greatly appreciated from a local perspective.
Awesome, that's great to hear.
I think the data feed channel is also very beneficial, so that was a great idea.
Awesome, is that working for everyone? Does everyone know what the data feed channel is and how to access it? Perfect. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll move on. We already kind of talked about this topic a little bit earlier on an earlier slide. Wanted to see if there were any issues updating your contact information. If you did have any issues, you can come to me, or you can come up to Jen, and we'll get those resolved, especially if you got your account deactivated. That's not good. We want to get you back in there. We'll move on to a few more discussion questions, just kind of briefly talking about reports because we value y'all's reports so much. It helps us so much. So we kind of want to just talk about what you and your jurisdiction decide to send us regarding reports. Kind of just get your brain. What kind of things do you think we want to hear?
Y'all need to speak up. We have wind sensors at every one of our outdoor warning sirens, and so a lot of times we will just throw in there, if y'all are looking for winds, we'll throw in there, hey, this side is getting X amount of winds to help validate for you on the downstream warning, whether to keep it on or close it down. So that's one of the tools that we use to help provide you all that information.
Perfect. Appreciate that. Anything else?
In Irving, at least, if we have any like major incidents, because we have a lot of highways that run through our city, reported by police or fire, we try and put those in as soon as we hear them. That's just like a general awareness for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll just briefly run up all kinds of different reports that we want. Of course, we want your hail reports. Send us sizes. We love those hail reports. General weather even as well. You're seeing fog. We want to know how dense that fog is getting. If that fog is becoming hazardous on the roadways, we want to know. So in case we can get out a dense fog advisory. You're starting to see flooding in your area. Let us know. We really want to know that. You've got specific rainfall amounts that have fallen in a specific amount of time. We want to know that. So just think about those things because we really do value all of your reports. It helps us out a lot when we're making warning decisions. Do these reports for areas upstream of your jurisdiction mean anything to you? Do you take any different actions? Do you make any different decisions if you start seeing reports upstream of you? Awesome, that's good to hear. Anything specific?
I know, I think it was early last year, and this was also when I was back in Carrollton, when Grapevine had that, I think 8-0, we had one tornado. We were hesitant about sounding off the sirens because we did have like about a 30-minute lead time. But because of the time of the day and because of the wind speed in Grapevine, what was happening, I know you guys share like reports of the accumulators being turned over on the highway, so that was very beneficial to us. Since we have 35 running, we send off the sirens because it was like rush hour as well. So their reports were helpful as well.
Just goes to show how valuable reports are in the working area. Anything else?
It's beneficial to us, as you were talking about earlier, how the west side kind of gets that lag. So it's really great for us when the counties to the west of Fort Worth are reporting because that kind of helps break down that lag time a little bit. So.
Any other input? What you do with those reports within your jurisdiction?
I want to throw out a question out there. For the EMs, is there anything that you would like the media partners to post? So Kyle mentioned the things he wants to see in there, so let's reverse that. Nothing?
Just make sure that you are concise on your location and time. Make sure you put that in there. And of course, hail size or wind gusts. A lot of people don't have an anemometer. They're not going to stand out there, hold it out there with 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts. If you do, great, post it. Just stay safe. But I think location to be detailed, short, and to the point will help. That's what I can think of right now.
Any EMs have any input from that question from Juan?
I don't know who shares it, but I know the old chat, somebody would share like social media links. That was beneficial because I would be on like Twitter looking and I would hashtag like Carrollton, weather, blah, blah, blah. So it's beneficial to have that kind of filtered already in the chat, if that makes sense. Because that also kind of helped us guide our decisions. But I think that was reporter or spotters that would share those social media links. I'm not sure who would share those.
Oh, sometimes when people would put links on social media in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple people that just do that. Anybody can do that. If somebody has put a report on your social media feed that you can just grab and put in like, hey, here's a picture of hail from my jurisdiction, instead of having to type it all up. Anybody is able to do that. Of course, we got to just remember our rights and our terms of service and things like that, but it's certainly okay, and we may do it at times too, like, hey, we got a confirmed picture of a tornado, here's the link on social media, and know that we can't just grab that and go share that else without proper permission, but yeah, anybody can do that. We do not have any social media sites in chat anymore, so if you might not see quite as much of that right now, but it's still a best practice that we can continue to if that's helpful to everybody, and it's easiest to grab those reports and share them over.
Awesome. Anything else? So I'm the last person standing between you and lunch. We will go ahead and move on. Last thing, just some local policy reminders. One of the main goals is we want this chat to work efficiently. We want to keep that clutter down, especially during big weather events. So the first thing, we want you to avoid setting your profile picture to anything with a yellow background or something similar to our profile picture. We want y'all to be able to notice that it is us posting and not anyone else, especially since we don't have the ability to highlight the text quite yet. So avoid making your profile picture anything yellow. Like it was mentioned earlier, we want you to avoid threading your responses, especially during weather events. We want you to respond directly in the main channel, so those responses aren't getting lost in the threads, and people don't have to go looking for those responses. So if you've got a question, or you want to respond to someone else, just go ahead and do it in the main channel, so everyone can see it. Continue avoiding sending DMs to individual forecasters. Everyone's doing a pretty good job of that. I don't think that's a big issue. Direct any questions you have to the main channel, and the forecaster on shift will answer as quickly as they can. We want you to avoid posting any animated GIFs and memes in the main channel. I don't think that's been an issue yet either. Again, one of the main goals is keeping that clutter down in the main channel so everyone can see everything easily. And lastly, we do love your reports. Keep sending us any and all weather reports. They are very valuable to us. But like it was mentioned earlier, if you've got any photos and videos, please be mindful of how many that you're sending at one time. Again, we're trying to reduce that clutter. This may be an appropriate time to thread those images under a single post. If you've got a bunch of images of things, maybe this is a good time for it. But yeah, I think that's all I have. Unless anyone else has any input about NWSChat, I think the transition has been relatively smooth. I think it went well enough, but of course, if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, you can reach out to Jen, you can reach out to me, and then you can also reach out to Patricia in the back. She's on the NWSChat team as well. But thank you all so much.
This chat, just in general, one thing I do want to say is relevant to what Chase kind of said. He made the comment of, oh, I know y'all are so busy, so sometimes I don't want to ask. And I say it again and again. Please ask. you're not bugging us. As Tom mentioned earlier, we have one person dedicated to chat, and that is usually the only job they have because we realize the importance and the quick flow of information. So that person has the responsibility of taking your questions, knowing who to go to get the answer, and getting that information back to you. So it's usually not always going to be the person that's issuing the warnings, it's also doing chat. So we realize the importance and we divide it. So please ask. Don't be afraid to ask. You won't be bugging us. Send us your reports. Like Kyle said, we do like the pictures too. If you don't want to put it in chat, you can still email it to us. And also, if you have multiple pictures, you can thread them in a response. I know we said not to thread on there, but multiple pictures can be threaded to help save some space there. All right, last thing before, where are we going? Lunch, that's it. Last thing before lunch, does anybody have anything else, just in general, for the greater good of the whole here in the group, or for the Weather Service in particular, anything that y'all want to bring up or ask about? Any last minute questions?
Just real quick, are you all still sending your automated calls? Like if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and we anticipate a 4 a.m. storm in Tarrant County and it's moved up, old school, we would get the heads up call. Are y'all still doing that?
No, we're not doing the heads up spotter activation calls anymore. We're relying more on the technology of INWS to give you those alerts, which is why if you sign up for INWS, I encourage you to expand your alert area out so you have that advance notice of warnings that are being issued in the area. I would even go a county or 2 out, even from a city standpoint. That way, at least in the middle of the night, it can still wake you up as a delivery to your phone, and you can look and see what actions you need to take then. So between that and the information, now the mobility to quickly look at NWSChat 2.0 on our mobile phone, that's one task that we've dropped off in order to pick up our services on the other side and make them better with Chat 2.0 and the INWS and all that. So no. All right, last 2 things. We will send out all the slides. Actually, I think we might be hosting them again on the COG website, so we'll provide a link to that. We'll have some wrap-up notes. We'll have a couple of the links in here as well. I want to thank everybody for coming once again and participating. Hopefully you found a lot of this useful. We look forward to the next one. We've got a couple of things I'm not going to guarantee next year because we've got a couple other things in other regions we need to do IWTs for also. So it might be in about 2 years. Maybe we'll go back to the springtime on that. So appreciate y'all being here. I can't think if I am forgetting Juan. Is there anything else? Juan, I do want to give Juan props. He was the head lead of this IWT workshop. First time. Y'all enjoy, pay attention to the weather this weekend, but y'all enjoy. And Tom, I forgot to introduce you at the beginning too. Tom, our meteorologist in charge, who's spoken a couple times, but go ahead, Tom.
No, I just want to thank Maribel and everybody in the COG staff. We could not do this without the great facilities here and the support that we have. So I just can't say that enough. I just appreciate what the COG does to help us, not just for the IWT, but in so many other ways. So just thank you. Thank you, Maribel, thank you, and everybody else on the local COG team. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the day. We'll talk to y'all soon.